Chapter 185. Kong Shong Shin suddenly stretched out his hands. At the same time, the shadowless blade that had once angered the lower three heavens and caused the lower three heavens to tremble suddenly appeared in his right hand. With a shua sound, he drew a large circle above his head. The wall that had already become soft suddenly caved in. With a loud rumbling sound, the entire building collapsed along with the collapse. Kong Shong Shin's skinny body turned into a beam of light and quickly flew up. He was the first to rush up. At this time, whoever went up first would undoubtedly suffer the fiercest attacks of the enemy. It was the most dangerous. However, this king-level leader who only knew how to use others was willing to use his own flesh and blood to open a path for the first time in his life. For his dying brother. Boom! The entire ground caved in. The entire courtyard was filled with water. Thus, everyone was watching from afar. There were also soldiers who were trying their best to bring water over. All of a sudden, the ground collapsed, revealing a huge space. Everyone was stunned. Word! At this moment, a thin figure, dressed in black and holding a shining saber, rose up from the ground like a demon god. He stood in the waist-deep water and his eyes were sharp. In the darkness of the night, they were like two spears, flashing through the sky like lightning, emitting a dazzling brilliance. His body was full of mud and dirty. Standing in the water, only his upper body was exposed. However, his entire body emitted a fierce aura. He was like a trapped lion that had nowhere else to go, but he still displayed the might of a king. An unyielding fighting spirit. The turbulent water gushed in from under his feet, stirring up turbid waves, making him look like an underwater demon who was walking up step by step on the wave. After a few more roars, 7 people appeared next to this person. There were only 8 people, but they were facing an army of 10,000. Their faces showed no fear. They actually emitted a biting cold aura. In the distance, Chu Yang's pupils suddenly shrank. They came out. 2 king-level leaders, Guo, were here. The information was indeed correct. Cheng Ang roared. He was about to lead people to rush up, but Chu Yang waved his hand and stopped him. May I ask which 2 king-level experts of the Golden Horse Riders department are on the opposite side? Chu Yang casually asked. Kong Shong Shin stared at Chu Yang from afar. After a long time, he finally smiled and said, "You are King of Hell Chu, right?" Chu Yang's face was covered with a black cloth. He said, "Yes. How could I dare to call myself the King of Hell in the presence of 2 king-level experts? He deserves it." Kong Shong Shin's gaze swept through the air and landed on Chu Yang's face without any emotion. Chu Yang felt as if his face was being pierced by needles. I was able to move unhindered in the 3 heavens. Even when the 4 great clans joined hands, they were still unable to force me into a dead end. But you did it. Respect. King of Hell Chu, you are very scheming. Good move. Kong Shong Shin stared at Chu Yang for a while before he finally let out a long sigh. These few words of praise contained too many complex emotions. After seeing the real King of Hell Chu, Kong Shong Shin finally understood that he had been tricked by this guy. Looking at this guy's aura, he definitely did not surpass the martial master level. Therefore, the 3 jade thrones that appeared before and after the fight with Yin Wu Fa must have been part of King of Hell Chu's crafty scheme to frame us. Just as Diwu Qingru said, he used the people from the other 3 heavens clans to train. He hated himself for being played in the palm of his hand. It was not until he was in a desperate situation that he finally realized. But it was too late. "I don't dare," Chu Yang said in a dignified voice. "May I ask if you are Sad Saber King, Kong Shong Shin? Who I am is no longer important." Kong Shong Shin chuckled and shook his head. His eyes slowly turned as he looked at the silent army around him. The corners of his mouth curled up into an arrogant smile as he said, "This kind of formation, you really think too highly of me. There are at least 50,000 people around, right? King-level expert, you underestimate yourself too much." Chu Yang said calmly, "Just for this place alone, in order to keep all of you here, I've mobilized more than 15,000 archers." Chu Yang's sharp eyes looked at Kong Shong Shin. "More than a third of all the archers in Iron Cloud Citadel are here. There are still more coming from the outside." Kong Shong Shin laughed and said, 15,000 archers. This is enough to decide the outcome of a battle. Even if I die, I will die with honor, Chu Yang casually said. Right now, this area has become an iron bucket. In the direction of King's Citadel, the King's Citadel guards have not moved and are fully focused on defense. The east, west, north, and south gates are all under lockdown. Plus, it is too far from here. He looked at Kong Shong Shin with pity. You are already at the end of your rope. You want to persuade me to surrender? Kong Shong Shin chuckled. His eyes suddenly became cold. Then you underestimate me too much. You underestimate Golden Horse Riders Department. Not at all. Chu Yang respectfully said, a king-level expert must have dignity. Even though I am not a king-level expert, I do not want to humiliate a strong person. You should end your own lives. Chu Yang calmly said, let me also maintain my unyielding respect for a king-level expert. Kong Shong Shin laughed mockingly, end our own lives. King of Hell Chu, do you think you can dream while standing? He let out a long roar and fiercely said, King of Hell Chu, even if I cannot avoid dying here today, you should prepare for a large amount of compensation from the military. Chu Yang coldly smiled. Both sides were stalling for time. Kong Shong Shin was stalling for time to recover his martial strength. Even if he could recover a little bit more, it would be good. However, Chu Yang was stalling for time to wait for the encirclement to be completed. Chu Yang's heart faintly had a glimmer of hope, Tai Bu Tian's support. Even though there was not much hope right now, as long as the two Shadow Guardians came, there would be no unnecessary casualties. They would be able to capture these two seriously injured king-level expert. They had not made a move yet, but Chu Yang knew that once they made a move, the other side would fight like a cornered beast. The casualties on his side would be extremely high. The counterattack of a king-level expert on the brink of death would definitely be earth-shattering. Kong Shong Shin was right. If they wanted to capture these two king-level experts, the price they had to pay would be extremely heavy. Time slowly passed. Finally, the soldiers from the outside gradually arrived. 3 layers on the inside and 3 layers on the outside, the encirclement was like an iron bucket. Chu Yang was about to give an order when suddenly, a horse galloped in from the outside. The person on the horse was Chen Yutong. Chen Yutong passed through the encirclement and went straight to Chu Yang. He hurriedly whispered, Minister, the Crown Prince has gone to the palace. The Emperor's illness has relapsed. After the Crown Prince entered the palace, he did not come out. Why didn't you say so earlier? Chu Yang was furious. He almost wanted to slap him. Doesn't that mean? I've given the enemy some time to catch their breath, but the reinforcements I want are out of the question. Chen Yutong's face turned pale. After he arrived at the Crown Prince's residence, he immediately rushed to the palace and waited for Tai Bu Tian to summon him. However, Tai Bu Tian did not appear. Until Du Shiqing came and said that the emperor was not well. The two king-level experts were protecting the emperor's vitality. When Chen Yutong heard this, he knew that the two king-level experts would not be able to come. He immediately rushed back, but it was already at this time. King-level expert Kong, sorry for the offense. Chu Yang shouted, kill. Since the reinforcements were not coming, then they would have to use their current strength to pay the price. Chu Yang made a prompt decision and issued this cruel order at the first moment. This roar set off the beginning of the war. With this order, a rain of arrows covered the sky. Thousands of arrows turned into the first wave of attack. The second wave of arrows was also shot out almost at the same time. Spread out. Kong Shong Shin roared. The 8 people he was worried about also exploded at the same time and scattered in 8 different directions. At the same time, Kong Shong Shin stomped his feet. His whole body flashed with a golden light. The water in the courtyard suddenly surged like a screen and spread out in all directions like countless angry dragons, facing the rain of arrows. With a whoosh, all the torches in the vicinity were extinguished by the water at the same time. The distance was brightly lit, but this courtyard had turned into a shimmering darkness. Without a sound, the Iron Horse Knight turned into a hedgehog and fell to the ground without making a sound. The two martial great masters were halfway there when their bodies were hit by arrows at the same time. Blood splattered out of their bodies as they screamed in pain. Dozens of arrows were mercilessly shot into their bodies. The two of them shouted at the same time, "King Level Leader, your brother will go first. Let us open the way for you." Before they finished speaking, the two used all their strength to throw out their weapons. Then, they laughed miserably and slowly fell into the water, creating a red splash. A saber and a sword passed through space like a meteor and flew into the crowd dozens of feet away. Screams resounded. "Brother, wait a step. We will be there soon." Old Sa laughed heartily. Kong Shong Shin and the remaining 5 people had already closed the distance of 300 feet like meteors. The 2 king-level experts were like 2 sharp arrows, whistling through the air. The rain of arrows was like a waterfall. Kong Shong Shin's shadowless saber was constantly flying. Occasionally, the saber would sweep horizontally and cut all the arrows in half. His other hand would grab the arrowheads, and in the next moment, they would turn into cold stars and be reflected back. The saber did not stop, and his hand did not stop. The sound of the arrows piercing into the flesh of the human body was unceasingly heard. Many of the surrounding soldiers had already died under this counterattack. Kong Shong Shin was rapidly flying. His long hair fluttered behind him, but his face was as calm as water. Under the illumination of the lanterns in the distance, although it was dark, his eyes emitted a faint light like that of a hungry wolf. His current state was at its peak. It was as if he was not injured at all. The dense rain of arrows could not hit his body. Occasionally, an arrow would break through the saber net, but it would be knocked to the ground by his protective energy. He was like a hurricane, like a burning torch. He completely disregarded his own body and turned the last bit of heat in his body into a flame that could burn people, rising fiercely. He had already rushed within 200 feet. Chapter 186. The javelins of the 3,000 javelins turned into black rays of light. From different directions, from different angles, they all shot towards the same target, the group of 5. Kong Shong Shin let out a long roar. His body suddenly straightened up. His toes touched the tip of the first wave of javelins. His body soared into the air and met the second wave of javelins. His hand suddenly chopped down. With a loud shout, his body continued to rise. His long saber flashed again and again. His body rose more than 100 feet into the air. Then, like a streak of flowing light, he drew a strange arc. Behind him, there were flashes, and rows of phantoms suddenly appeared. But he himself had already swept across the sky, and with a dazzling saber light, he directly crashed into the army formation. The saber flashed fiercely as if a small sun had suddenly appeared. At the front of the army, there was a sudden explosion of blood. The waves of blood surged. Kong Shong Shin cleared a large area in an instant. Then, he immediately killed his way out. To help his brothers, Yin Wu Fa held a javelin that he had just intercepted and crazily rushed forward. There were 3 or 4 arrows stuck in his body. Of the remaining 3, Old Sa was the first to charge through the rain of arrows and javelins. A 7th-grade revered martial artist followed closely behind him. Together with Yin Wu Fa, they formed a small triangular formation and rushed out. However, the last 4th-grade revered martial artist was a step too slow. When the rain of arrows was about to reach him, he took a deep breath. However, it was this breath that cut off his life. The spears that followed were like deadly bolts of lightning, nailing him to the ground. Then, the continuous rain of spears and arrows smashed his body into minced meat in an instant. The rain of arrows was still tirelessly falling, and the javelins were still falling endlessly. Yin Wu Fa and the others were trapped less than 50 feet away from the army. Seeing that they were in imminent danger, Kong Shong Shin roared and turned around. He rushed out of the army. Countless bodies were thrown into the air by him. Then, the bright saber light broke through the darkness and reached Yin Wu Fa's side. "Follow me." Kong Shong Shin's voice was already hoarse. Without stopping, he immediately turned around and led the 3 of them into the army. The rain of arrows and spears suddenly stopped. The soldiers roared angrily, "Kill!" They came from all directions like a tidal wave. "Close combat." Chu Yang immediately ordered. "Minister, it would be better to wait for a moment. These 2 king-level experts are at their peak. So, It would be better to let these soldiers exhaust their strength. Then, our experts will go all out, and will secure the victory in one fell swoop. The words of this revered martial artist from the imperial palace made Chu Yang fly into a rage. He slapped the revered martial artist's face ruthlessly. Bastard. Loss. In order to deplete their strength, Benge, a good person, they were using the lives of their soldiers. Your life is important, but are the lives of these soldiers not important? Get him. If you slow down, I'll take the heads of your entire family. On the other side, Chengeng roared and led the experts of Bu Tian Pavilion to charge forward without any fear of death. Everyone charge. As an expert, he had to bear more responsibilities at this time. Chu Yang roared, for our brothers, we have to fight for a chance to survive. The battlefield had turned into a meat grinder. Kong Shongxin and Yin Wu Fa were fighting fiercely. 2 king-level experts and 2 high-level revered martial artists. At this moment, their fighting prowess made everyone who saw them tremble in fear. Even though they were all seriously injured, even though their bodies were full of arrows, it was as if they were possessed by gods and demons. They did not fall down, they were fighting. In this desperate battle, they had already charged 500 feet forward. An endless stream of soldiers was rushing toward them. With a miserable scream, the 8th grade revered martial artist suddenly screamed in fear. A soldier put down the body of his comrade and suddenly jumped up with red eyes. He completely ignored his own safety and hugged the corpse. Hugging the corpse was the same as hugging a saber. The saber flashed and the soldier's 2 forearms flew off. However, his remaining arms were still wrapped around the 8th grade revered martial artist's body. He held on tightly and opened his mouth. His white teeth also fiercely bit down. Ah! The revered martial artist screamed in pain. Immediately, the soldier was blown into pieces by him. The soldier only managed to hold him back for a short moment. If this was a normal situation, this moment would not be much. But right now, he was surrounded by an army. There were dozens of sabers, swords, and spears all around him. Just as he pushed the soldier away, 7 or 8 soldiers jumped up at the same time. Their faces were ferocious, and their sabers slashed down without any regard for their own safety. The spearman in the back also fiercely thrust forward to greet him. The revered martial artist screamed and tried his best to dodge, but a spear still pierced his abdomen. It was not easy for him to get here. He had almost overdrawn all his strength. At this moment, he did not have the strength to dodge. His right hand grabbed the spear in his abdomen. He screamed in despair and used his saber to pierce through the spearman. The saber flashed and suddenly chopped down. His right hand flew out of his body. He screamed in pain as his only remaining left hand grabbed the soldier's neck. However, at the same time, 7 or 8 sabers fell down. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. His hand also brushed past the throats of 4 soldiers. The 4 corpses had not yet fallen down when another 10 or 20 people rushed forward. Wild cries and shrill screams rang out at the same time. 1 saber cut off his left hand. 1 saber cut off his right leg. He fell to the ground. A soldier threw away his saber and suddenly grabbed the spear that was still in his abdomen. He fiercely twisted it. With a loud roar, he lifted him into the air. Kill. Countless sabers and swords greeted him at the same time. Suddenly, blood and flesh flew everywhere. There were only 3 people left. Kong Shongxin angrily looked at King of Hell Chu in the distance. He was so angry that his teeth were about to break. The enemy did not make a move. As long as King of Hell Chu made a move, with his and Yin Wu Fa's strength, they could use King of Hell Chu as a distraction to fight and retreat. The army would not be as fearless as they were now. However, King of Hell Chu did not move. This made them lose their greatest chance of survival. All around Kong Shongxin were corpses. At a glance, there were several hundred corpses. There were also many bloody alleys in the distance. These were the results of Kong Shongxin's efforts. After a long battle, coupled with his injuries, Kong Shongxin gradually felt that his vision was blurring. The strength in his body was also gradually decreasing. This situation made Kong Shongxin suddenly realize that death was approaching. I can't hold on much longer. Could it be that I am really at the end of my road? Once this thought arose, Kong Shong Shin suddenly felt unreconciled. How can I die like this? How can I die so easily? Suddenly, he crazily chopped out 177 sabers. 40 or 50 people screamed at the same time. Suddenly, he shouted, Wu Fa. Yin Wu Fa was already soaked in blood. Hearing this, he shouted, Second brother. His situation was not good. If old Sa was not by his side, this king-level leader would have been turned into minced meat. Old Sa. Kong Shong Shin roared again. Old Sa shouted, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. The three people continued to roar. It was as if the fact that they were still alive gave them great strength. In the distance, Chu Yang's expression changed and he said, This is not good. Send out the order. The bugle horn sounded. The people who had just participated in the attack retreated like a tide. Another group of soldiers roared and rushed forward. These two king-level leaders are really two good men. Ji Mo, who was next to Chu Yang, exclaimed. Not bad. Chu Yang watched the battle with rapt attention. He constantly made hand signals and gave out orders. He said seriously, Unfortunately, they are our enemies. What a pity. Ji Mo said regretfully. Just as the words what a pity came out of Ji Mo's mouth, the battle situation suddenly changed. Come closer. Kong Shong Shin's roar shook the night sky. Okay. Yin Wu Fa and the old Sa roared at the same time. It was as if they were moving the entire battlefield. The sounds of battle were being controlled by these two people, and they were moving closer to Kong Shong Shin's side. Don't let them get close. Chu Yang shouted. He was sensitive enough to feel that once the three of them got close to each other, there would be an unexpected change that would occur. Cheng Eng roared. In the middle of the battle, he led his subordinates to intercept them without any regard for their lives. The people on the other side were rolling. Kong Shong Shin was like a mad tiger, killing his way over. Wherever he went, countless pillars of blood spurted out. His path forward was dyed red with blood. The stirred bloodlight seemed to be emitting blood-colored fireworks for the sorrowful throne at any time and place. The entire battlefield seemed to have fallen into a nightmare. Everything seemed to have become unreal. Before the encirclement, everyone thought that Chu Yang was making a big fuss over nothing. In order to deal with a few people, he had mobilized an army of 100,000. But now, everyone was awed by the battle prowess of these few people. Are they still human? Under the encirclement of an army of 100,000 and the threat of 15,000 archers, they were still able to fight to this extent. The number of casualties had already reached a shocking level. If it were not for the fact that so many people were mobilized at the same time, even if their numbers were reduced by half, these people would not have been able to stop them. All the brave warriors in the army, as long as they went up, were dealt with in a breath's time. Those martial artists and martial masters, whom they had once looked up to, had all turned into corpses in mere moment. It was said that these people were seriously injured. If they were not injured. The commander shuddered. The distance between Kong Shong Shin and Yin Wu Fa was only 50 feet. But this 50 feet distance, under Chu Yang's command, became a natural moat. Almost all the masters were gathered here. If they tried to force their way through, even if Kong Shong Shin was not injured, he was not confident. Chapter 187. Immediately after, Kong Shong Shin's throne in the air suddenly emitted a golden light. Kong Shong Shin suddenly jumped up from the ground. His body suddenly spun, and his saber became one with his body, turning into a bright ball of light. Then, he shot into the sky. Woo! A strange sound was heard. The bright saber flashed with a dreamlike brilliance in the sky and headed straight for the crowd. Chu Yang panicked and roared, Scatter. This is the life saber technique. The life saber technique was a king using his own life to fight. This was not the same as being one with the saber, but the power was the same. With the saber as one, there was still a chance to recover. However, with the life saber technique, one's life force would be burned away, and there would be no chance to recover. Because of this, the life saber technique was also known as the countdown to life. Because once it was used, the person's life would enter the countdown. Sad Saber King Kong Shong Shin was finally going all out. Once this move was unleashed, Even if no one attacked Kong Shang-shin, he would still die without a doubt once the aftershock of this move dissipated. Chu Yang had been waiting for this moment for a long time. How could he be willing to let his subordinates die for the sake of a doomed sad saber sovereign? Cheng-Eng heard this and roared, "Scatter!" He quickly rolled away, but his back was still hit by the saber. A large piece of flesh flew out. Hall Master Cheng was in so much pain that his whole body trembled violently. Under Kong Shang-shin's desperate efforts, Yin Wu Fa and the three old men finally met up. "Second brother!" Yin Wu Fa crazily screamed as tears streamed down his face. "Yin Wu Fa!" Kong Shang-shin screamed to the sky. His long hair flew up. "Don't let me die with regret." "Second brother!" Yin Wu Fa screamed. His whole body suddenly trembled violently. "Let's go!" Kong Shang-shin roared. Suddenly, his whole body emitted a golden light. He grabbed Yin Wu Fa and shouted, "Old Sa, are you willing to accompany me on this road to the netherworld?" Old Sa laughed aloud and roared, "I was just about to accompany my wife to see this so-called nether spring. Good. Today, I, Kong Shang-shin, have wronged you. On the Yellow Springs Road, let me apologize to you." Kong Shang-shin roared and suddenly took a deep breath. The golden light on his body became extremely dazzling at this moment. Then, he suddenly leaped up. However, he only leaped 10 feet before he stomped his feet down. Old Sa roared. His body flashed, and he appeared under Kong Shang-shin's feet. His two palms condensed all of his strength, and he suddenly pushed upward. Boom! Kong Shang-shin's feet suddenly landed on the old Sa's palms. With a strong recoil, a king-level master and a middle-level revered martial artist worked together to push him forward. Kong Shang-shin's hand that was holding Yin Wu Fa suddenly turned into a rainbow that shocked the sky. It flew up 300 feet in the air, and then slanted for several hundred feet, flying towards Chu Yang's position. Behind him, sonic booms resounded in the air. A wisp of white smoke suddenly spread out. "Protect the minister!" Cheng-Eng screamed and jumped up from the ground. He didn't care about the blood and flesh on his back. He screamed and rushed towards Chu Yang with all his might. Whoosh! Kong Shang-shin's body had already reached the highest point. If he flew any further, he could only fall. At this moment, Kong Shang-shin warmly looked at Yin Wu Fa in his hand. His eyes emitted deep emotions. Yin Wu Fa crazily screamed, "Second brother, don't!" Kong Shang-shin turned a deaf ear and suddenly roared towards the sky. In the sky, the throne formed by the golden light suddenly spun like the sun. Then, with a loud bang, it exploded into countless golden stars and then disappeared into the night sky. Kong Shang-shin's body strangely stopped in midair. Then, he suddenly flew up 7 or 8 feet. Suddenly, he roared, "Brother!" His arms spun like a windmill, and he threw Yin Wu Fa's body out. Just as he made his move, Kong Shang-shin's body suddenly flashed again. Blood crazily spewed out from his mouth. He quickly chased after Yin Wu Fa with both hands and feet. He used an unimaginable speed to chase after Yin Wu Fa, who was flying at high speed. Hundreds of palms continuously landed on Yin Wu Fa's soles. Then, he screamed, "Don't let me die with regret." Suddenly, he spun around and ruthlessly kicked Yin Wu Fa's soles. Whoosh! Behind Yin Wu Fa, there was a series of sonic booms as he flew away at high speed. He was like a meteor flashing in the night sky. In just a few moments, he was already more than 1,000 feet away, and could no longer be seen. This is the last move of a king-level master, turning into a golden light. At this moment, I am the king. It is to shatter one's own soul. No matter how injured a king-level master is, in this short period of time, he can use the explosion of his soul to double his strength. Ji Mo's face was heavy as he said, "This move is invincible." And, this king-level expert used this trick to help his own brother escape. Chu Yang sighed and said, "Even if they are enemies, this brotherly love is truly touching. I am envious." Ji Mo nodded. At this moment, a golden light flashed in the sky. A loud roar sounded, "King of Hell Chu, give me your life." Kong Shang-shin used the last of his power to suddenly descend from 400 feet in the sky toward Chu Yang. "King of Hell Chu, give me your life." Old Sa was on the ground, But he also mustered the last of his strength and rushed toward Chu Yang without regard for his own life. Yin Wu Fa was not out of danger yet. Only by creating more chaos here would Yin Wu Fa have a chance to escape. Therefore, Old Sa and Kong Shong-shin were fighting with their lives on the line. Countless figures leaped into the air, and a rain of black arrows and spears shot into the sky like meteors. Kong Shong-shin laughed out loud. Jin Ran did not dodge. His eyes flashed with a ferocious light as he rushed toward Chu Yang. At this moment, all of his life force had been converted into one attack. His soul had been shattered, and his golden crown had disappeared. However, he still rushed forward. The sky full of arrows was like 100 rivers converging into the sea as they converged on Kong Shong-shin's body. At first, he was still able to shake them away, but later on, they pierced his flesh. A spear was thrown from Jimo's hand. With a whoosh, it pierced through Kong Shong-shin's abdomen. Kong Shong-shin did not slow down and continued to rush forward. He was only 3 feet away from Chu Yang. At this moment, in his eyes, there was no sky, no earth, no enemies, no tens of thousands of soldiers. There was only one person, King of Hell Chu. This was the real King of Hell Chu. Kong Shong-shin did not care about the wounds that others inflicted on his body. It was as if he did not feel anything. He only had one goal, to kill King of Hell Chu. Close. Kong Shong-shin's body was covered with countless arrows as he finally arrived in front of Chu Yang. Jimo roared and fiercely stabbed out with his sword. Kong Shong-shin's 7 orifices were bleeding. His hand suddenly shot out. Dang! The sword and the saber collided in the air. Jimo roared and spat out blood as he retreated. The shadowless saber and the long sword, these 2 divine weapons, exploded in the air at the same time. Kong Shong-shin's momentum did not decrease as he went straight for Chu Yang. Chu Yang's eyes were as cold as ice. He was waiting for the right moment. He could not dodge. If he dodged, he would lose the geographical advantage. Under the momentum, even if Kong Shong-shin was on the verge of death, he could still kill him. He could only face it head-on. Kong Shong-shin was already an arrow at the end of its flight. As long as he could block it, he would be finished. But at this moment, Jimo suddenly roared and rushed forward again. His body moved horizontally and blocked in front of Chu Yang. His 2 palms crossed as he attacked. He knew that Chu Yang was only a martial artist. Even if Kong Shong-shin was weakened to this extent, Chu Yang still could not block him. At this moment, he did not know why he was so excited and rushed forward. Kong Shong-shin fiercely rushed forward. Their palms met. Bang! Catcher! Jimo's wrists were broken. Immediately after, Kong Shong-shin's other hand pierced towards Jimo's chest like lightning. Damn it! Kong Shong-shin's eyes were full of anger. He was about to succeed, but a young martial great master appeared out of nowhere. At this moment, Kong Shong-shin's hatred for Jimo surpassed everything else. Jimo roared and fiercely kicked out. His heart was cold. He was unable to dodge Kong Shong-shin's palm. If Kong Shong-shin's palm hit, Jimo would die without a doubt. A shadow flashed. Chu Yang's indifferent black-robed figure appeared in front of Jimo. Bang! Kong Shong-shin's palm, which was supposed to hit Jimo's chest, mercilessly hit Chu Yang's chest. At the same time, Chu Yang's left palm hit Kong Shong-shin's chest. His right palm condensed Calamity Sword and suddenly pierced into Kong Shong-shin's heart. Suddenly, it twisted. Catcher! Catcher! Kong Shong-shin and Chu Yang, who were at the end of their rope, had their ribs broken. Both of them simultaneously spat out blood and powerlessly flew backward. Boss! Jimo screamed. His eyes immediately turned red. Then, he threw himself backwards, and used his body as a cushion to catch Chu Yang. Chu Yang spat out a mouthful of blood. He endured the pain in his chest and lightly said, "You were willing to sacrifice your life for me. How can I let you die?" Jimo was stunned. Chu Yang's words were vague, but he understood the meaning behind them. "You treat me as a brother. If you were willing to sacrifice your life for me, I would also be willing to die for you." Kong Shong-shin's body flipped backwards. Blood splattered on the ground and he suddenly stopped moving. He stood there proudly. His eyes were like sharp swords as he looked in Chu Yang's direction. Chu Yang struggled. He held on to Jimo's shoulder and stood up. His eyes met Kong Shang-shin's from afar. Kong Shang-shin's eyes revealed a trace of disappointment. Then, he stood there as if he was using all of his strength to slowly move his eyes away and look at the night sky. That was the direction Yin Wu Fa had left in. Kong Shang-shin's eyes were full of longing. He gently let out a breath. His entire body suddenly became still and motionless. "Don't touch him," Chu Yang shouted at a few soldiers who were about to rush forward. He sighed and said, "He is already dead." Yes, this generation's king-level master, who once dominated the lower three heavens, was no longer breathing, although his eyes were still wide open and his body was still standing. Chapter 188. King-level master. The old Sa was already covered in wounds and had reached the final stage. Suddenly, he let out a heart-wrenching roar and jumped up. However, he was pierced by hundreds of spears at the same time while he was still in the air. The battlefield suddenly fell into silence. Looking at the entire area that was in a mess, looking at all the buildings that had collapsed in this battle, everyone felt as if they had just woken up from a dream. Only the fresh blood on the ground was still flowing quietly, even making a slight splashing sound. "It's finally over." Chu Yang stood up tiredly and muttered, "The price of encircling two king-level masters is actually so heavy." His body swayed and he almost fell to the ground. Kong Shang-shin's last attack, even though he was like a lamp without oil, was still enough to almost kill Chu Yang. If that palm had landed on Jimo's body, it would have hit his chest. Chu Yang suddenly stepped forward, and that palm landed on Chu Yang's right chest. His internal organs were shaken, and several of his ribs were broken. Fortunately, Kong Shang-shin's last bit of strength was only at this point. Otherwise, if the Tribulation Sword Spirit did not take the initiative to attack, Chu Yang would not have been able to save his life. "Count the casualties. Do your best to chase after the other king-level master who escape." Chu Yang gave this order. He felt something sweet in his throat and spat out another mouthful of blood. He was on the verge of collapsing. Right now, Chu Yang was very confused. What was Tai Bu Tian doing? Why didn't he come for such a big event? Also, the two shadow protectors were nowhere to be seen. If one of them came, this battle would not have been so tragic. Finally, the battle came to an end. Ironcloud Citadel also fell into a state of relative peace. The pursuit of the remaining members of Golden Horse Riders Department did not relax. The search inside Ironcloud Citadel was still ongoing. All of Ironcloud Citadel's areas leading to Great Jiao were also being searched. However, Chu Yang knew that this would not be of much use. The chances of finding and capturing the king-level leader who had already escaped was simply too small. Right now, Chu Yang was lying on a soft bed, trying his best to heal. Jimo's injuries were much lighter than Chu Yang's. After staying here for a while, Jimo felt uncomfortable. So, Chu Yang had no choice but to send him back to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Jimo didn't say anything when he left. It seemed that tonight's outing with Chu Yang was just an ordinary trip. As for getting injured, it was just a common occurrence for a man of Jianghu. However, his eyes were obviously more dignified and thoughtful. The way he looked at Chu Yang was also more respectful than before. He was no longer so frivolous. These descendants of aristocratic families were all extremely shrewd. "It can't be said that I'll be loyal to Chu Yang for saving my life this time. Even if I die, I won't leave him. This is impossible." Moreover, the reason why Chu Yang had gotten injured for him was because Jimo had attacked him first. However, Chu Yang had firmly planted a seed of the word brother in his heart this time. What is a brother? Kong Shang-shin and Yin Wu Fa, who were bathed in blood and fighting in desperate situations, were able to help each other and shed their last drop of blood for their brother. They were the perfect embodiment of the word brother. Kong Shang-shin was a notorious bandit, and Yin Wu Fa was a notorious assassin. There was one more thing: they were both enemies. Plus, they had caused great harm to their own troop. However, their bad reputation and hostile status could not cover up the brotherly love between the two of them. Even though they hated the two of them to the bone, there was no man in the world who did not envy their brotherly love. This is what a brother is. Jimo was deep in thought. When he returned, the sky was already bright. Chu Yang was quietly lying down in Bu Tian Pavilion. His mind was replaying Kong Shongshin's last move over and over again. That brilliant saber light, the golden crown that exploded in the air. Finally, the gaze that he used to look in the direction that his brother escaped was so meaningful and sincere. Thinking about it, Chu Yang sighed. Such a brother is worthy of being called a brother. For Yin Wu Fa to have such a brother in this life, regardless of life or death, he would have no regret. 3 of Chu Yang's ribs were broken. Every time he sighed, he felt a piercing pain. However, this pain made him remember Kong Shongshin's expression even more clearly, so he sighed again. In the end, Kong Shongshin died at Chu Yang's hands. The tip of the calamity sword pierced his heart and killed him at that moment. Regarding killing Kong Shongshin, Chu Yang did not regret it. Witnessing the love between his enemies, Chu Yang felt very moved. But, an enemy is an enemy. Minister Chu could not help but sigh again. Chu Yang's sighs made Wu Qian, who was taking care of him, feel very distressed. She could not help but softly advise him, "You are already seriously injured. Why are you sighing like this? Take care of your injuries. No matter how big the matter is, wait until you are better." Hearing her words, Chu Yang sighed again and asked, "Recently, is there any news from the sect?" "No." Wu Qian's expression was a little sad. She lowered her head and said, "Father has not sent any news for a long time." Chu Yang sighed softly. His eyes were a little perplexed as he looked outside the window. He softly said, "Every time I am injured, I miss Shiji." Wu Qian's hands trembled. She was startled for a while. She looked at Chu Yang's eyes and suddenly became very gentle. She softly said, "Me too. Every time I am injured or sick, I want to stay in my mother's arms and act like a spoiled child. This is human nature." Wu Qian suddenly felt that at this moment, Chu Yang was really like a little martial brother of his age. When injured, he would always be weak and emotional. Right now, she could clearly feel that Chu Yang was very lonely. He was like a child who was hurt but could not find his family. He needed her to take care of him and protect him. However, she didn't know that the injuries Chu Yang was talking about were from his previous life. In his previous life, Chu Yang was alone. Every time he got injured, he would curl up in a corner and recuperate by himself. He would always remember how Meng Chao Ran had taken care of him when he was young. Every time he thought about it, his heart would always be filled with endless bitterness and sadness. Haha. Chu Yang chuckled and said, "But I will not act like a spoiled child." Wu Qian coquettishly rolled her eyes at him and said, "You are a man. If you act like a spoiled child, you will become a joke." As she said this, she picked up the medicine that was a little cold. She used a spoon to scoop it up and tasted it. She leisurely sat by the bed and gently said, "Come, take the medicine. Be good and open your mouth." Wu Qian's voice sounded like she was coaxing a child. Chu Yang did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Senior Du will come in a while. It seems that the palace is very busy." Wu Qian said. "Why bother Senior Du with such a small injury?" Chu Yang's eyes faintly flashed. At this moment, "Minister, His Highness is here." Chen Yutong came in to report. Before he finished speaking, Tai Bu Tian had already walked in. His face was still calm and indifferent, but the depths of his eyes were filled with fatigue and bloodshot. "Minister Chu, I am sorry. I am late." Tai Bu Tian stood in front of Chu Yang's bed. The first thing he said was an apology. This was beyond Wu Qian's expectations. The first thing the heir to the throne of a country said was an apology. There is nothing to be sorry about. Chu Yang said casually, "Does His Highness know how many people died in this battle?" "I am sorry. I was really anxious. Last night, the palace suddenly came to report that father's condition had suddenly worsened. Senior Du said that it might have happened in one night. I left in a hurry. The 2 uncles also did their best to stabilize father's vitality. It was not until this morning that I found out that such a big thing had happened in the city. And Minister Chu had already completed a major operation." Tai Bu Tian's tone had a touch of guilt. He also understood that if he could have cooperated with Chu Yang at the first moment, then the losses in the battle would have been reduced by at least half, or even more. But in his worry and confusion, although Tai Bu Tian knew that Chu Yang would have a major operation tonight, he still went to the palace first. Sigh. Chu Yang sighed. Tai Bu Tian's attitude of admitting his mistake was very sincere. Chu Yang could not say anything. Besides, this matter could not be said to be Tai Bu Tian's fault. His biological father was seriously ill. He could not possibly ignore it, right? Moreover, Tai Bu Tian went to the palace before Chu Yang arranged the operation. This was even more difficult to blame. The number of casualties of the minister was calculated. Chen Yutong came in again. His expression was much more serious. Yes, how is it? Chu Yang asked. 3,370 soldiers have died in battle. The injured, 113. Chen Yutong said, this is the military's loss. As for Bu Tian Pavilion, 77 people died in battle and 50 were injured. The guests of the imperial residence, 18 people died in battle and 35 were injured. The Ministry of Justice, a total of 100 people died in battle and 14 were injured. Bu Tian Pavilion's hall leader Cheng is seriously injured. The minister is seriously injured. Chen Yutong finished and sighed softly. On the side, Tai Bu Tian sucked in a breath of cold air. 8 people. A total of 8 enemies. 4 of them died under the arrows. And these casualties were basically killed by the hands of the other 4. And among the other 4, 3 of them were even more ferocious. Each of their subordinates took more than 1,000 lives from us. Chu Yang lightly said, this is the power of experts. Tai Bu Tian's face suddenly turned red. He also had the strength of experts on his side, but they were brought to the palace by him. If the 2 shadows participated in the battle, then these casualties could definitely be rewritten. Or even not at all. But they did not. Chu Yang did not say anything, but Tai Bu Tian understood the meaning of Chu Yang's words. Your father is a father. Then, how many fathers do these 4,000 people have? How many are fathers? Chapter 189. Chu Yang closed his eyes tiredly and said indifferently, Clan Master Chen, you can leave first. Qianqian, you too. The 2 of them looked at Chu Yang worriedly and finally walked out of the room, knowing that Chu Yang wanted to talk to Tai Butian alone. And this conversation would probably not be pleasant. Watching the 2 of them leave, Chu Yang was silent for a long time. I'm listening, Tai Butian said softly. I actually didn't want to say anything, but after thinking for a long time, I still have to say it. Chu Yang's voice was a little sharp as he said, in your opinion, the emperor is critically ill, and as the Grand Empress, you should be by his side to serve him. In your opinion, the emperor's life and death also determine the fate of Iron Cloud, so the Grand Empress needs to be present. You need to use your greatest strength to treat the emperor's illness. This is very reasonable. As a woman, it is understandable for anyone to make such a decision. Chu Yang said quietly, but you must never forget that you are also a ruler. These reasons can be said very well in any other place, and can be understood by others. But, they can't be said in the army, Chu Yang said heavily. Tai Butian suddenly looked up, wanting to say something, but Chu Yang didn't give him the chance to speak, quickly cutting him off. The army respects orders. Soldiers in the army, even if their parents are lying on the bed with only 1 breath left, as long as the army orders to gather, they will immediately set off and rush to the battlefield. If they are late by even a moment, their heads will roll. Military law is merciless. Military law doesn't give any reasons. Whether the father or mother is seriously ill, they can only obey orders. Chu Yang said indifferently, it was the same last night. With one order, nearly 4,000 people threw their lives away here. Your Highness, what can you compensate them for? Chu Yang asked sharply, what can compensate for the pain of a mother losing her son and a wife losing her husband? Because war is merciless, sacrifices are inevitable. For so many years, millions of men have died on the battlefield, and no one said anything. This is a necessary sacrifice. Chu Yang said, however, when unnecessary sacrifices and completely avoidable sacrifices happen, no amount of regret or compensation will help. Tai Butian stood quietly, listening to Chu Yang's words. He knew that Chu Yang was a little emotional today. So he didn't say anything. Minister Chu, don't you think that your words are a bit harsh? A shadow guardian appeared and said coldly. I am not Tai Butian's subordinate. Chu Yang also said coldly, I'm just helping. What we, the Jados, are protecting is also the Tai clan's territory. If Tai Butian herself doesn't care, then we don't have to. He narrowed his eyes and coldly looked at Ying. If the advice is unpleasant to the ears, then your highness can choose not to listen. You can also choose to banish me. Tai Butian heaved a long sigh. He waved his hand to stop the shadow from speaking further. He said, Minister Fei, you should recuperate well today. I am at fault for what happened today. In the future, I will come and beg for forgiveness from the minister. Then, he stood up and said, Minister Chu, take a good rest. When he reached the door, Chu Yang said coldly, the corpses of the soldiers who died in battle have yet to turn cold. The remnants of the Golden Horse Riders Department had yet to be executed. Your Highness, don't disappoint the soldiers. Tai Butian's body paused at the door. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't. He sighed and walked out. Chu Yang lay down heavily on the bed. He narrowed his eyes and thought about something. Chu Yang was a little impulsive today. He also wanted to control it, but the moment he saw Tai Butian, he suddenly decided not to control it. Tai Butian was a king, but this kind of mistake was not something a king could make. Of course, he had a legitimate reason, but a legitimate reason did not necessarily mean that it was acceptable. If in the future, when the situation got worse and worse, Tai Butian still persisted in this filial piety that was praised by the whole world, it could lead to an unprecedented chaos in Iron Cloud. A catastrophe. Because Tai Shi-cheng did not have much longer to live. Whether Tai Butian was willing or not, he had to learn to accept from now on. Using such an extreme method to force a filial son to become a qualified king was cold-blooded. But Chu Yang had no other choice. Because if Tai Butian could not change this mindset, then Chu Yang would not see any hope of victory in this ancient war with Diwu Qingru. Send someone to the palace. As long as Senior Du has time, ask him to come here immediately, Chu Yang ordered coldly. In addition, Qian, go to Heavenly Armament Pavilion immediately and ask Jiyu Duxing and Dong Wushong to come here. Chu Yang wanted to give a strong dose of medicine, and now, he felt that this was the best opportunity. An hour later, Jiyu Duxing and Dong Wushong appeared in front of Chu Yang. How are your injuries? Jiyu Duxing asked with concern. I won't die yet. Chu Yang smiled. Then, his expression became serious and he said, Duxing Wushong, there is one thing that I wanted to do after a while. But now, it seems that it must be done immediately. You two can help me with this. What is it? Just say it. Jiyu Duxing and Dong Wushong were very straightforward. They were so bored that their bones ached. When Ji Mo returned with his injuries, he bragged a lot. When everyone heard that he went with Chu Yang to do such a big thing, they were very envious. They wished that they could go out and fight as well. I need you two to help me kill a few people. Chu Yang's eyes flashed coldly as he slowly said. Perhaps, now was the best opportunity to do so. Chu Yang had always been suspicious. Why did Iron Cloud Emperor Tai Shi-cheng's condition drag on? Why did it not get worse earlier or later? Why did it suddenly get worse at this critical moment? Why did it get worse to the point where two king-level masters needed to use all their strength to keep him alive? This was too much of a coincidence. If someone said that Du Shiqing had nothing to do with this, Chu Yang would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. And doing these things required time. In a hurry, Du Shiqing could not have done it so accurately. According to his calculations, it should have been some time after Kong Shongshin was injured. Then, Heimo retreated from Iron Cloud Citadel, and he began to search the entire citadel. It was during this time that Iron Cloud Citadel's Golden Horse Riders Department realized that there was a big crisis. In order to divert Iron Cloud's attention, he used Tai Shi-cheng. At the very least, with Tai Shi-cheng in this situation, Tai Butian and his two king-level masters could be completely restrained. For the already injured Kong Shongshin and Yin Wu Fa, This was undoubtedly the loss of their two biggest muscles. It was because of this that Chu Yang was very dissatisfied with Tai Bu Tian staying in the palace for so long. With Tai Bu Tian's intelligence, he should not have fallen into the enemy's trap, but he did not even think about it and went to the palace. This made Chu Yang realize Tai Bu Tian's biggest weakness. Even though Tai Bu Tian was wise, decisive, and ruthless, there was one thing that made people uncomfortable. He was very emotional. Emotional. This kind of thing might be cute on a woman, but on a man, especially one who was the future emperor of a country, it was very uncomfortable to find this kind of thing on him. If he wanted to influence Du Shiqing, how? Du Shiqing himself would not do this kind of thing, and he would not contact Diwu Qingru's people. Chu Yang was very sure of this. Du Shiqing's hatred for Diwu Qingru was definitely not fake. Then, was it the people around him? The person I want you to kill is... Chu Yang said seriously, do not expose yourself. Don't worry, this is too simple. Dong Wushong laughed and looked forward to it. Jiyu Du Xing gently nodded. His eyes suddenly revealed a sharp murderous intent. Cheng Yun he stood in front of the window, feeling cold all over. Last night, after he finished arranging everything, he immediately left. But 2 hours later, there was a large-scale battle. The sound of the fierce battle could be clearly heard from a few miles away. But at that time, he could not do anything. He could only try his best to control his subordinate's urge to go help and wait in silence. Kong Shongxin's cry of "Don't let me die with regrets" shook the entire iron-cloud citadel from its slumber. At that moment, Cheng Yun he clearly felt that Kong Shongxin was finished. Not long after, Yin Wu Fa's battered and bruised body suddenly came in. He twitched a few times, said a few words, and then fell into a deep coma. Go! Save my second brother. At that moment, Cheng Yun he felt as if he had experienced the vicissitudes of life. He almost could not control himself. He immediately arranged for people to take Yin Wu Fa away and erase all traces. He knew that the pursuing army would arrive soon. Sure enough, after a short while, the search team arrived in waves. They even tore open the quilt and searched the whole place. When everything finally calmed down, it was already dawn. Yin Wu Fa's injuries were very serious. His life could be in danger at any moment. However, he had already used the Jade Spirit Ginseng once. Using it again would be useless. Cheng Yun he could only give him Meng Hun solution. Then, he immediately began to make arrangements to leave. Meng Hun solution could only guarantee 1 month's time. If they could not return to Great Zhao within a month, Yin Wu Fa would die without a doubt. But right now, Ironcloud Citadel was in a state of panic and unrest. All 4 gates were closed to search for spies. How could they leave? Because of this, Cheng Yun he frowned every day. He asked many officials to leave the citadel by doing business, but all he received were apologetic replies. Cheng Yun he thought for a long time, but he could not think of a safe way to leave. From that day on, he did not even dare to use the invisible falcon to send messages. Because there were people watching the sky day and night, the invisible falcon needed a short period of time to fly into the sky before it melted into the void. During that period of time, with the current strict surveillance, he was afraid that someone would find out. Once found out, it would be a disaster. Unable to contact him, Cheng Yun he became even more anxious. If Prime Minister Diwu Qingru knew what had happened during this time, how would he react? Chapter 190. Of the 30 experts from Golden Horse Riders Department who came this time, 20 had already died. 3 command horse riders were all dead. Of the 2 king-level leaders, 1 died in battle. If the other one was not sent out, he was also in trouble. This was the biggest loss Golden Horse Riders Department had suffered in the past 10 years. It was the first time that a king-level expert had died outside the sect. Cheng Yun he could only imagine how crazy Golden Horse Riders Department would be when they heard this news. Thinking about his own situation, Cheng Yun he felt powerless to ask the heavens. He came to Ironcloud Citadel with a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. But when he came here, he did not do anything and immediately fell into this awkward situation. From the first day he came here, Kong Shongxin acted without permission and dragged him into a quagmire. Now, He was stuck in this quagmire and could not pull himself out. He frowned as he paced around and muttered, "Do I really have to take the risk?" In the afternoon, Du Shiqing arrived late. Right now, Ironcloud Citadel was in a state of chaos. When Du Shiqing came, naturally all the bodyguards had to follow him. When Fire Saber Great Master Jiao Wei Cheng and the 4 knights arrived at the door of Bu Tian Pavilion, they were stopped. They were politely led to the main hall for tea. Regarding this, Jiao Wei Cheng was indignant and said, "We have known Minister Chu for a long time. Why is it that after using us to climb to a high position in Iron Cloud, you suddenly turn against us? What a despicable person." Jiao Wei Cheng's words caused all of the Bu Tian Pavilion members to angrily stare at him. Especially those who had bandages on their shoulders. Their eyes were spitting fire, and they wanted to go up and chop this skinny old man with a mouthful of shit into meat paste. "Sir, I don't care who you are. If you say one more bad word about Minister Chu, I cannot guarantee that you will walk out of here alive," Chen Yutong said with a serious face. Jiao Wei Cheng snorted. His face was full of disdain, but he did not say anything else. At this moment, Chu Yang and Du Shiqing were sitting across from each other in the room. "Senior Du, I want to know what kind of weakness Diwu Qingru has on you." After a while, Chu Yang looked at Du Shiqing fixing his broken bones and slowly asked, "Blackmail?" Du Shiqing's hand trembled. "Yes, I am very curious. With Senior Du's character, how could you be threatened by Diwu Qingru?" Chu Yang said casually, "Especially last night, the monarch's illness was so coincidental. This made me feel even more uncomfortable." "Ah." Du Shiqing looked up at the sky and sighed. After a long silence, he finally said, "My parents, wife, and son are all in Golden Horse Riders Department. My parents are almost 80 years old. The most hateful thing is that my son, who is 23 years old this year, was brainwashed and joined Golden Horse Riders Department as a silver horse rider, and my daughter-in-law is actually a silver horse rider of the Golden Horse Riders Department. Once I make a move, my family will be annihilated." Du Shiqing sighed helplessly and said with a wry smile, "What can I do? Who would truly live for the sake of the world? After all, they are in the minority. Most people live for their parents. Others may not care, but I, Du Shiqing, cannot." Chu Yang was silent. He also sighed. Du Shiqing's matter was definitely a dead end. If it was just his family being held hostage, then this matter would be easy to solve. He could send a few experts and secretly bring them out. Although this matter would be difficult, it was not impossible. But the problem was that his son and daughter-in-law were loyal to Golden Horse Riders Department. This was the root of his stubbornness. Even if they were brought out, they would only be bringing out 2 spies. If Senior Du Shiqing did not betray but went missing, what would happen? Chu Yang probed. If that was the case, then perhaps they would be safe. Du Shiqing smiled bitterly, but how would they go missing? How could it be so easy to fool Diwu Qingru? "It is not that there is no way." Chu Yang gently tapped the edge of the bed with his finger and said casually, "Fire Saber Great Master Jiao Wei Cheng, what is his role in Golden Horse Riders Department?" Chu Yang's words were very certain. Du Shiqing smiled bitterly and said, "Sure enough, I can't fool you. Jiao Wei Cheng is a dark horse rider. But this person likes to be alone. Although his martial arts are not outstanding, his ability to control firepower is not to be underestimated. Plus, Jiao Wei Cheng seems to have come from a mysterious place. There is a huge force behind him. I only know this much." "Not necessarily. Mysterious place." Chu Yang sneered and said, "Even if Jiao Wei Cheng really came from that place, his identity is only a lowly person. How could someone from that place be so weak? Plus, once he came from that place, there would be many people working together. How could it be just him alone?" "You know that place?" Du Shiqing asked. "Yes." Chu Yang pondered and nodded. He asked, "Did Jiao Wei Cheng inform you of Golden Horse Riders Department's operation?" "The other 4 guards." "I am not sure." Du Shiqing smiled bitterly and said, "I know what you want to do, but this matter needs to be handled carefully. What if The force behind Gao Wei Cheng is not something you can deal with right now. If we have to be careful in everything, then the best way is to do nothing. Chu Yang said softly, since we have already done it, even if the sky falls down, we have to go back up. It is not a big deal, Chu Yang said. Du Shiqing sighed deeply. Du Shiqing went back. On the way back, he sat in the carriage with a worried frown. Thinking about Chu Yang's words, he became even more worried. He was not worried for himself, but for Chu Yang. If it worked, then there would be nothing to worry about. But the problem was, would his plan succeed? Would it implicate himself? Especially when Chu Yang said something that made Du Shiqing's hair stand on end. Senior Du, with the monarch's condition, if you don't do anything, how many days can he last? This. I am not sure. If I let him go, I am afraid he will only have 10 days. 10 days. At that time, Chu Yang said thoughtfully, should be enough, right? What does Chu Yang want to do? Senior Du, this Chu Yang really thinks too highly of himself. This is simply intolerable. Gao Wei Cheng said angrily as he drove the carriage. At that time, when he was in such dire straits, he came to find Senior Du on the surface. He said it was to repay a favor, but in reality, he was using Senior Du's reputation to come to Iron Cloud to find a chance to rise up. At that time, he said righteously that he would never enter the bureaucracy. Now that I think about it, it is simply disgusting. Gao Wei Cheng's saliva flew everywhere. Don't say any more. Du Shiqing closed his eyes slightly and said lightly. This bastard, sooner or later he will. What sooner or later, Gao Wei Cheng did not say. He drove the carriage without saying anything else. The imperial city was already close at hand. The road to the sky was wide and flat. There were patrolling soldiers all around. Logically speaking, this was the safest place. Mr. Du, please come with me to see a patient. Thank you. A faint voice said faintly. His voice was clear and elegant, and very courteous. Who is it? Gao Wei Cheng stretched his neck and asked. In the past few days, as long as he occasionally came out, there were too many people who stopped Du Shiqing to see a patient. Over time, Gao Wei Cheng had already gotten used to it. It is me. The faint voice said lightly, Senior Du has not spoken yet. What are you, a coachman, shouting for? Gao Wei Cheng was furious and said, when you ask someone to see a patient, you must be polite. What kind of attitude is this? As he said this, he stood up from the carriage and looked around. His face was full of anger. The voice replied, Curtis? I have not learned it yet. But for disobedient people, I have already learned how to kill. Before he finished speaking, a jet-black saber light appeared in broad daylight and turned into a lightning bolt that struck Gao Wei Cheng. After the saber light flashed, a faint shadow suddenly appeared. Another shadow with a shining sword came out from under the carriage. With a swoosh, the 4 guards' throats were cut and they were thrown in 4 different directions. Then, this person entered the carriage and said faintly, Senior Du, saving a patient is like putting out a fire. Come with me. With a boom, the roof of the carriage was pierced through. A masked man in black with one hand carrying Du Shiqing flew out of the hole and landed on the roof of the carriage. Then, with a kick of his feet, he flew out like a big bird. Using the roof of a house on the side of the road as leverage, he disappeared without a trace with a whoosh. At this time, Gao Wei Cheng was already out of breath from the saber that was as dark as night. If he did not crazily throw out fire, his head would have already fallen to the ground. At this moment, seeing that Du Shiqing was taken away, Gao Wei Cheng turned pale with fright. He wanted to rush forward to stop them, but the saber technique of the masked man in black was very flexible. His body did not land on the ground, but Gao Wei Cheng was already in a difficult situation. He could not free his hands and could only watch as Du Shiqing was taken away. Someone come quickly. Senior Du has been taken away. Gao Wei Cheng was in a hurry and did not care about face. He screamed at the top of his lungs. This is a saber great master. The masked man in black coldly sneered, you have really lost the face of a saber great master. It was clear that this masked man in black was also a saber great master. Gao Wei Cheng's screams spread far and wide. Immediately, the surrounding troops began to gather. I originally wanted to play with you, but I did not expect that you would not even care about face. You might as well not even care about your life. The masked man in black suddenly shouted and pulled back his saber. In an instant, it was as if all the air in the area was sucked out by his saber and turned into a vacuum. Then, the saber, as dark as night, came down with a swoosh. This saber did not have any fancy moves, but it was very imposing. It made people feel that even if there was a mountain in front of them, this saber would still be able to split it. Moreover, this saber did not hold back. It seemed that no matter what was in front of it, after splitting it, it would not stop. It would continue to slash downwards and split the earth in two. Gao Wei Cheng only felt that the opponent's saber was firmly locked onto him. For a moment, it was difficult for him to even use his saber. He could not help but be scared out of his wits. Suddenly, he screamed. The saber in his hand and the 7 orifices on his face suddenly spewed out fire. Chapter 191. So this is the Fire Saber Great Master. The man in black snorted coldly. His saber's aura changed 4 times. With a shua sound, the oncoming fire was split in half by this saber. Then his saber slashed the ground with a shua sound. Using the rebound from the saber, the man in black somersaulted into the air. At this time, the first wave of arrows came down like a waterfall. The man in black did not make a sound. His saber was in the air. With a shua sound, his body changed direction and avoided the arrows. He landed on top of the wall and disappeared without looking back. Gao Wei Cheng still maintained his saber-slashing posture. His 2 eyes stared fiercely in front of him. His 7 orifices were still spewing out fire, then the fire suddenly disappeared without any warning. Gao Wei Cheng's eyes slowly became unfocused. He turned a deaf ear to the people who rushed over and asked him questions. He did not respond at all. Immediately after, a thin line of blood slowly appeared on his forehead. The line of blood slowly spread out, and then with a swoosh, it spurted out. Gao Wei Cheng's standing body suddenly split into 2 halves, like a watermelon that was cut from the middle, and fell to the ground with a plop. His entire body maintained perfect balance. From head to crotch, it was split into 2 halves. The 2 halves of his body neatly formed the word one on the ground. His internal organs spilled all over the ground. There were screams all around. Many soldiers were so scared that their weapons fell to the ground. Then one by one, they turned around and vomited. Du Shiqing's bodyguards were all dead. Fire Saber Great Master Gao Wei Cheng died in battle. Divine Doctor Du Shiqing disappeared. Moreover, the most ironic thing was that this happened right in front of Iron Cloud Citadel's royal palace. In fact, it was not even 100 feet away. This kind of thing was like pouring oil on the already boiling Iron Cloud Citadel. It completely blew up. Tai Bu Tian lost his usual calmness and became furious. He ordered a search of the entire citadel. King of Hell Chu lost his usual gloominess and became furious. He ordered, even if we have to turn over all the rat holes in Iron Cloud Citadel, we must find Divine Doctor Du. All the officials in Iron Cloud Citadel were furious. They spontaneously organized their guards to participate in the search. Tai Long Cheng, who was still on the front lines, was furious. He ordered the military to search with all their might. In just a moment, Iron Cloud Citadel began to shake as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. Iron Cloud Citadel is now in a state of chaos that cannot be described in words. You're right. You've just killed a king-level master. Iron Cloud Citadel is now in a state of chaos. The craziest of them all was King of Hell Chu, Minister Chu. Under the mobilization of Bu Tian Pavilion, King of Hell Chu's eyes behind his mask became blood red. He glared fiercely at his 200 subordinates and said through gritted teeth, Senior Du Shiqing is a godly doctor of his generation, and I owe him a great favor. This time, I don't care who took Mr. Dean. In short, I must make him pay. Unbearable price. I want to let these daring thieves know that there are some things that they can't do. There are some people you can't afford to offend. Now, The biggest suspect is the remaining members of the Golden Horse Riders Department in the city. These bastards must have been driven to desperation and committed such atrocious act. Now, I give the order. Cheng-Ang. Minister Chu's roar shook the entire Bu Tian pavilion. Dust began to fall from the roofs. Subordinate is here. Hall leader Cheng, who had not recovered from his serious injuries, stepped forward. My order. King of Hell Chu's crazy eyes flickered with a hysterical rage and an unconcealable murderous intention. Everyone who saw him shuddered in fear. Fierce Bloodhall must stop the new murderers. Everyone must be mobilized at once. If you can't find Mr. Dean, Cheng-Ang, think about the consequences. Yes. Cheng-Ang's thin face was dripping with sweat the size of soybeans. Chen Yu Tong. Minister Chu roared again, and the entire hall shook 3 times. Subordinate is here. Chen Yu Tong trembled as he came out. My order. Heavenly Secrets Hall, stop the new training. Everyone, move out. All the intelligence networks, move out. All the connections, use them all. All of them. That, all of them, that, and that. King of Hell Chu excitedly slapped the table. Do you understand? Chen Yu Tong fainted. The first hall master really wanted to ask, Minister, what is that? What is that? L, ref equals and quo, RG equals and quo, underscore BLNK equals and quo, and G, however, hall leader Chen didn't have the guts to do so. So, he stood up straight, and said in an imposing manner, Minister, this subordinate completely understands. Good. If you can't do it, you should think about the consequences. Minister Chu pointed with his right hand, move out immediately. Yes. Chen Yu Tong's face was firm. He walked out the door with firm steps. He thought to himself, wait until Minister Chu's anger subsides. I have to go in again and ask what that is. Otherwise, I have already said it clearly. If I can't finish playing, then I will really, pass down my order. King of Hell Chu's thunderous roar came from the main hall, Capital Imperial Guards, 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 Capital Justice 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 Imperial Guard. Even if these bastards turn into bedbugs, dig them out and chop them into pieces. This murderous aura, this, Chen Yu Tong wiped the sweat off his face and quickly walked out. I should hide first. Tai Bu Tian was rushing to Bu Tian Pavilion. Tai Bu Tian's intuition told her that this matter had something to do with King of Hell Chu. But she could not describe what she was feeling. Just as she arrived at Bu Tian Pavilion, she saw a group of people wiping their sweat in fear. They walked out one by one, their faces pale and sweating. What's wrong? Grand Elder asked. Before he finished speaking, a crashing sound was heard from inside. With a sudden sound, a broken table flew out and fell into the courtyard, breaking into pieces. Immediately, a furious roar was heard. Bastard! Bastard! This is the biggest joke in the world. The Divine Doctor was robbed in front of the Imperial City. What are all of you doing? The country's salary is feeding you fat, motherfucker. You just take the money and don't do anything. This iron cloud must be cleaned up. It must be seriously reorganized. Everyone jumped in fright. Clean up. You've almost killed them all. This Bu Tian Pavilion. It must be cleaned up. I don't want any of these vermin. Crush them to death. Minister Chu's angry voice came out from inside, accompanied by the crashing sound of things being smashed. Everyone shuddered as Feng Xian ran out of the room in fear. Cleaning up the bureaucracy, if it was not serious, it would only result in imprisonment. But cleaning up Bu Tian Pavilion, it was a dead end. Hurry up and get to work. What the hell? Fuck. King of Hell Chu was still cursing. Tai Bu Tian listened with a calm face for a while, and finally walked in. Your Excellency the Minister, please calm down for the time being. Nonsense. How can I calm down after this? Do you know how embarrassing this is? Grand Elder? Minister Chu yelled halfway before he realized that the person he was yelling at was the Grand Elder. For a moment, he could not help but feel awkward. Tai Bu-tien stood quietly and looked at Chu Yang. After a long time, he slowly said, "Minister, what do you think about the disappearance of Divine Dr. Du?" "I am very angry," Chu Yang said. "For something like this to happen in the most important place in Iron Cloud Citadel, it is simply shocking." Chu Yang's tone was heavy. "Well, if Senior Du is not found, I am afraid there is no hope for my father's illness." Tai Bu-tien's voice was trying hard to control his emotions, but the sadness and helplessness were clear. Chu Yang sighed and lowered his head. Then he raised it up and looked at Tai Bu-tien. "I am very angry that Senior Du is missing. But when it comes to the Emperor's illness, please forgive me. I have a different view." Tai Bu-tien was silent. He also looked at Chu Yang's eyes without blinking and said, "Oh? These days, Du Xianyou came here. I also talked to him about the Emperor's illness." Chu Yang sighed and said, "Senior Du once said that the Emperor's current illness has reached the point where he is like a lamp that has run out of oil. Every time he took a breath, he would suffer great torment. Mr. Du's treatment of the Emperor is not a treatment at all, but a stimulation of the Emperor's pain as much as possible, using this pain to maintain the Emperor's breath and consciousness." Chu Yang said indifferently, "Senior Du once said that when the Emperor was conscious, he begged Senior Du countless times to stop treating him and to let him die quickly. At this point, continuing to live is tantamount to the greatest torture in the world. At this time, if you forcefully keep him alive out of filial piety, it is no longer filial piety, it is making him beg for death. Don't say any more." Tai Bu-tien suddenly shut her eyes tightly and let out a shrill roar. His chest rose and fell rapidly. After a long time, 2 clear tears flowed from his eyes, slid down his cheeks and dripped to the ground. He did not wipe them away. "How can I not know what you are saying? Every time I see my father struggling in pain, how can I feel good in my heart?" Tai Bu-tien murmured, "Don't I know that my father is living a life worse than death? Don't I know that he yearns to end his life immediately? My father was originally a hero of the world. But now, he doesn't even have the strength to end his life with his own hand. How sad is this for a hero?" Tai Bu-tien wiped his tears fiercely and suddenly said in a low voice, "But have you ever thought about me?" Chapter 192. You're not me. You don't know how I feel. Tai Bu-tien gritted her teeth. Although it was painful, as long as there was a breath, there was hope. Although the hope was slim and even laughable, there was still hope. I feel that every day is still full of hope. 17,000 years ago, when we were still eating raw meat and drinking blood, the first emperor of the First Empire, the emperor of the Oracle Empire, was on the verge of death. All the miracle doctors said that there was no way to save him, but at the last moment, a strange man came. With a heavy pill, the emperor recovered immediately. The emperor's injuries were much more serious than my father's. Tai Bu-tien reached out and grabbed Chu Yang's collar. She hissed, "He was the emperor, my father was also the emperor. But why didn't anyone send a heavy pill to my father? Why? Why? Heavy pill?" Chu Yang felt like his heart was hit hard by a big hammer. "That's right. It's the heavy pill. The truth of this matter has always been buried. No one has dared to speak out. Only the ancient records of the royal family have recorded bits and pieces of it. But it's precisely because of the royal records that there are no mistakes." Tai Bu-tien roared angrily. "Why didn't it happen when it came to my father?" Chu Yang was speechless. He didn't know that there was such a thing. A heavy pill had actually appeared 17,000 years ago. That was to say, there was once a tribulation sword master 17,000 years ago. Only the tribulation sword master could produce the heavy pill. Everyone knows that my father is better off dead than alive. But even if we don't talk about family ties, if we talk about the political situation, if I let my father die, am I still human? Who will fight for Iron Cloud? Because Iron Cloud has such a heartless emperor. Who will be willing to fight for him? What conscience does a person who doesn't even care about his own father have? What right does he have to make others risk their lives for him? I don't want to think about this. It's too cruel. But I can't not think about it. Do you think that I, Tai Bu-tien, want to be the emperor? Do you think that I really care about the throne? Do you think I really don't care about the world and the lives of the soldiers. Tai Butian glared at Chu Yong furiously. You were born in the wilderness. How much do you know about such politics? You only know what you should and shouldn't. But do you know that there is a clear line between what should and shouldn't? Tai Butian roared, everything that seems to be a golden rule to all of you is a grave mistake when it's me who's doing it. As the emperor, millions of people are watching me. What do I have to do? I also want to ignore everything and just go to sleep, but I can't. I also want to work when the sun rises and rest when the sun sets. You know, that kind of civilian life is my dream. But I will never be able to get it. Even if Ironcloud Nation is destroyed, I will not have it. Do you understand? Tai Butian said heavily, I'm very tired. I'm tired to death every day. But when I think about it, my imperial father is lying there. My imperial father is still there. He is still looking at me, looking at his son, working hard for Ironcloud Nation. I don't feel tired. Do you understand this feeling? Father Emperor's birth. Well, from a small point of view, I lost my father. But from a large point of view, it concerns the life and death of millions of people within 13 million li of Ironcloud. Tai Butian's voice slowly lowered. And now, the disappearance of Divine Dr. Du has caused my imperial father to lose all hope. I also don't want Divine Dr. Du to go missing, and I also don't want anything to happen to the emperor. Chu Yang slowly poured himself a cup of wine and said, but there is one thing that as the emperor, as the actual emperor, even if it is cruel, you have to see clearly. This matter, for Ironcloud, is beneficial and not harmful. That's right. Tai Butian's voice was very cold. For a long time, I, the Emperor of Ironcloud, have exercised my authority as the Emperor, but it has always been wrong. One country having two emperors is also a big taboo. With my imperial father gone, for Ironcloud's imperial court, whether it's the military or the government, whether it's those who originally opposed me or those who agreed with me, they have to take a step further. For Ironcloud, this is indeed beneficial and not harmful. Especially in such an intricate and complicated situation where the country could be destroyed at any moment. Such a situation is indeed a good thing. Tai Butian smiled coldly. But who would have thought that this is how I feel? Have you thought about it? Tai Butian went straight to the point. Have you thought about it? Chu Yang was dejected and speechless. I'm not the kind of ambitious and ruthless person who has too much power, Tai Butian said quietly. He turned around, his thin shoulders trembling. At this moment, this Emperor Bu Tian, who had always been wise and calm, actually looked so pitiful. I'm going to the palace. During this time, I'll have to trouble Minister Chu. Tai Butian took a deep breath and said, whether it's the compensation for the soldiers who died in battle, the search for spies, or the search for Divine Dr. Du's whereabouts, I believe Minister Chu will do a good job. Tai Butian turned around and said softly, my father only has a few days left. No matter what, I will take care of him. Even if the country is destroyed because of this, I will not hesitate. After he finished speaking, he quickly walked out. When he reached the door, he stopped and said softly, Chu Yang, if Du Shiqing is not found, I will hate you. I will hate you for a lifetime. Tai Butian was not stupid. Du Shiqing walked out of Chu Yang's place and then disappeared. How could he not be suspicious? But he said, I hate you and not I will kill you. This was somewhat thought-provoking. After he finished speaking, Tai Butian's figure disappeared from the door. Chu Yang stood at the door in a daze, looking outside. If someone could see his face behind the mask, they would be able to see that there was a fierce struggle on his face. Right now, Tai Shiqing's life was worse than death. Dying a bit earlier was a kind of relief for him. Moreover, it was a kind of favor. Everyone knew this. Forcefully dragging him out to prevent his death was too cruel for this once mighty monarch. This was also something everyone knew. Letting Tai Shiqing die at noon was not a sad thing for the entire country of Ironcloud, but a kind of relief. Plus, Ironcloud's political power would become more stable, and Tai Butian's position would finally be legitimate. For the war between the two countries, there was no more hidden worry. This was a great thing. Plus, Chu Yang choosing to let Du Shiqing disappear at this time was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. First, Du Shiqing was safe. Second, Iron Cloud Citadel was in chaos. There were still remnants of Golden Horse Riders Department left. This way, they could increase their search efforts. Most importantly, at this time, Golden Horse Riders Department's strength was greatly reduced. Of the 2 king-level leaders, 1 was dead, and the other was seriously injured. The 3 command horse riders were all dead. Golden Horse Riders Department's power in Iron Cloud was weakened to the lowest point in history. Plus, it had not been long since Tang Xinsheng and the other spies were caught. Golden Horse Riders Department did not have enough time to reorganize. Tai Shicheng's death at this time was definitely outside of Diwu Qingru's expectations. In Chu Yang's opinion, Diwu Qingru might not even have enough time to react. This was because the people of Golden Horse Riders Department in Iron Cloud Citadel would not dare to contact Great Zhao. Like this, Diwu Qingru's eyes were closed. As long as he did not know, or if he knew too late, then he would be able to smoothly pass through the chaos caused by Tai Shicheng's death in his previous life. This would quietly eliminate the greatest crisis of Iron Cloud, second only to Tai Butian's death. This was a good thing for Tai Shicheng, for Iron Cloud Citadel, and for millions of people. So many good things, so many benefits, but Chu Yang did not think about Tai Butian. He did not think about this problem from Tai Butian's point of view. Or maybe he thought about it, but ignored it. But now, Tai Butian's reaction made Chu Yang feel guilty. It made him start to think about what was right and wrong. His decision was not wrong. But he needed to reflect on his motives. No matter what, this caused a certain amount of harm to Tai Butian. Regardless of whether his motives were benevolent or selfish, at least if he said he felt guilty, then he would be letting Tai Butian down. Thinking about this, Chu Yang suddenly had a feeling, I want to change fate and change the world. Am I thinking too much from a selfish point of view? Thinking about this, Chu Yang became alert. He did not regret today's decision, but he set a rule for himself. In the future, when making a decision, he would think about it as much as possible. This was because he was afraid that he would regret it in the future, or, at a certain time, when he thought about something, his conscience would feel uneasy. Chu Yang knew very well that this kind of mental torture was the greatest torture in the world. That kind of guilt was enough to torment a person to the brink of death. Chu Yang did not want to owe this kind of guilt for the rest of his life. In the afternoon, after searching for Yin Wu Fa and the others, there was no news. Chu Yang was about to go back to Heavenly Armament Pavilion when a shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. The Emperor wants to see you. The Emperor wants to see me. Chu Yang was stunned. That Emperor? It's the current Emperor. The shadow explained stiffly, let's go. Chu Yang did not have time to reply before the shadow suddenly grabbed him. Then Chu Yang felt himself floating out the door. Then he floated out the door and floated to the Imperial Palace. Chu Yang was speechless. Even if you want to take me away, you should at least tell me first, right? Especially when you take me away and you don't show yourself. Everyone on the street will see me floating like a ghost. This kind of feeling was really depressing. The energy in your body is very strange. When the shadow put him down, he actually said something very strange. He frowned and shook his head. I have never seen it before. Then, without waiting for Chu Yang to reply, he disappeared. Chu Yang looked around and saw that he was already in the Imperial Palace. Outside a big hall, the air was filled with a strong smell of medicine. Through the tassels, he could vaguely see that Tai Butian was standing very carefully inside. He seemed to be bending over and saying something, but his voice was very low. After a while, Tai Butian turned his head and looked outside the door. He whispered, "Is Minister Chu outside?" Chu Yang said, "It is Chu Yang." Chapter 193. A servant quietly walked over and gently parted the tassels. After Chu Yang went in, he gently put them down and quietly left. From beginning to end, he did not make a single sound. Chu Yang went in and was stunned. In front of him, there was a soft chair. On top of it, there was a person leaning against it. Calling it a person was a bit of a stretch. It would be better to call it a skeleton. This person's entire body, excluding the bones, did not weigh more than half a pound. It could be said that it was a layer of wrinkled human skin stuck on top of a skeleton. On his face, there was not the slightest trace of blood. The only thing that had a bit of light was a pair of muddy eyes that were still flashing with the light of life. It was only when he opened his eyes that people could feel that he was still alive. There was a dark aura that belonged to the dead faintly emitted from this person who was still alive. He was wearing a bright yellow robe. This kind of noble robe could not hide the aura of this person. At this moment, his eyes were trying hard to look at Chu Yang. Chu Yang couldn't imagine how a person whose body had already reached such a level could sit up, even though he was just lying down. You are Chu Yang? This person's voice was very low. If one was not careful, one would not be able to hear it. However, the only fortunate thing was that although his words were vague, they could still be understood. Tai Bu Tian was standing behind him with one hand on this person's shoulder. Tears were flowing as if they would fall at any moment. This person was the ruler of Iron Cloud Nation, Tai Shi-cheng, Tai Bu Tian's biological father. He had been in a coma for a long time. Every time he was in a coma for more than 20 hours, but every time he woke up, it would not be more than 15 minutes. The most tragic thing was that every time he woke up, his mind would be absolutely clear. For a person with a body like this was the greatest torture. It was not as easy as being in a complete state of confusion. However, when he woke up this time and heard that Du Shiqing was missing, this ruler immediately urged Tai Bu Tian to give him dragon spirit incense. Dragon spirit incense was also called soul-returning incense. It could make a person on the verge of death appear extremely excited for a period of time. He supported a dying person to finish what he wanted to say and finish what he wanted to do the most. However, this period of time was very short. Once this period of time passed, the soul flame would be completely extinguished. He was completely dead. Yes, Chu Yang replied softly. He really didn't dare to speak forcefully. No matter how strong this monarch was, it felt as if he wouldn't be able to withstand the vibrations in the air. Ian, no need to be so polite. Tai Shi-cheng's eyes moved slightly. Come closer, let me take a look. You're standing so far away, I can't see your face clearly. Chu Yang agreed and took a few steps forward. He was only 5 steps away from Tai Shi-cheng, but he couldn't see him clearly. This monarch's eyesight was more or less the same. Not bad, you are indeed talented. Tai Shi-cheng smiled. It would have been better if he didn't smile. Now that he did, it was as terrifying as a malicious spirit. Your Majesty is too kind. Bu Tian often talks about you in front of me. Haha, he thinks I can't hear him. In fact, I can hear everything. Tai Shi-cheng's smile had a hint of pride. He sighed and said, Today is the most relaxed day I've had in 10 years. Behind him, Tai Bu Tian's face clearly reddened and then became pale. In this period of time, I know everything you've done. Tai Shi-cheng's eyes gradually brightened. Slowly, they became sharp. The aura of a monarch slowly spread out from his body and soul. This was the result of the dragon spirit fragrance gradually taking effect in his body. You have done very well. Tai Shi-cheng's sharp eyes looked at Chu Yang and slowly said, I have told Bu Tian many times that as a monarch, he must be ruthless. When it is time to kill, even if it is his own father or daughter, he must kill. There is nothing that cannot be sacrificed. This is the path of a monarch. The path of a monarch is a lonely one with many vicissitude. However, he has always been somewhat indecisive on this point. Being a monarch is much more tiring than being a normal person. Some people you know should not be killed, but you still have to kill. Some people you can't bear to kill, but you still have to kill. Some things you know are wrong, but you still have to do. Because as a monarch, you have to bear all of this by yourself. Even though Tai Shi-cheng was looking at Chu Yang, these words did not seem to be directed to Chu Yang, but to Tai Bu Tian. A monarch must think about the world, not himself, and definitely not his family. This is the sorrow of a monarch. Who in this world does not have feelings? A monarch also has feelings, but he cannot have them. Therefore, every monarch's heart is lonely, and also pitiful and sad. Every monarch's heart has countless debts of conscience. Day and night, they torture themselves. Therefore, for generations, the lifespan of a monarch is not. Tai Shi-cheng sighed. It was not known what he was thinking, but his eyes flashed with extreme regret and sorrow. Chu Yang did not know what to say to this dying monarch. He could only remain silent and not say a word. I ascended the throne at the age of 18. In a few years, I trained my soldiers and trained my horses. Looking at all the heroes in the world, no one could compare. This was the result of conquering the south and conquering the north. Just the sight of the wind swept away by the iron hooves. In just 5 years, I expanded Ironcloud's territory by 1/3. At that time, I was full of ambition. I always felt that the world was in my hands, and this world would eventually be unified by me. Ironcloud was stabilized. Great Zhao realized the threat of Ironcloud and sent troops to attack. At that time, I was in the prime of my life and full of ambition. The sharpness of Ironcloud's armors was unparalleled in the world. Even though Great Zhao had Diwu Qingru, it was difficult for them to resist the strength of my armors. At that time, Ironcloud's army of 500,000 was 400 miles long. They faced Great Zhao's army of 400,000 at Twin Dragon Mountain. I had absolute confidence that I could defeat Diwu Qingru's army in one fell swoop. Then, with an unstoppable momentum, I would enter the hinterland of Great Zhao. After destroying Great Zhao, I would use the power of thunder to swallow limitless nation. I would complete the dominion of lower 3 heavens. Tai Shi-cheng's voice slowly turned from hoarse to impassioned. His face also gradually turned red. His eyes suddenly became domineering and awe-inspiring. It was as if he was recalling the days when he led millions of soldiers to conquer the world. However, at the beginning of the decisive battle, we were suddenly attacked by suicide soldiers. 30 revered martial artists sneaked into the camp and tried to assassinate me. However, this was not enough. There was also a mysterious archer who shot an arrow at me from 100 feet away. Tai Shi-cheng's eyes revealed a powerless hatred. It was that arrow that dragged my life from the peak to hell. The poison on the arrow had no antidote. In that battle, without a leader, the army was defeated. I retreated back to Ironcloud Citadel like a turtle and lingered on my last breath until today. Tai Shi-cheng's voice gradually became low. 10 years ago, I should have died. Only now did I die. I really made them wait for too long. Tai Shi-cheng sighed and closed his eyes. 2 streams of tears quietly rolled down his face. Chu Yang quietly said, "Your Majesty, do you have any unfinished business? Right now, to say things like Your Majesty's body is in good health and you can relax your heart is not only inappropriate, but also stupid." Chu Yang knew that if Tai Shi-cheng wanted to see him, it was not just to say a few words. If he wanted to say something, there were so many officials he could say it to. Why did he have to say it to someone he met for the first time? Unfinished business. There are too many. Too much are. Tai Shi-cheng's body suddenly trembled. His voice was filled with extreme disappointment and regret that his ambition had not been fulfilled. Unfinished business is Ironcloud. Tai Shi-cheng sighed. Tai Shi-cheng sighed and suddenly asked, "Minister Chu, as a dying man, I ask you to stay in Ironcloud. Is that possible?" Chu Yang was startled and raised his head to look at him. Bu Tian, this child, has the heart and temperament to be a king. He has plenty of strategy, but not enough ruthlessness. Tai Shi-cheng's skeletal eyes looked deeply at Chu Yang. Minister Chu is decisive and efficient. You can perfectly make up for Bu Tian's lack of ruthlessness. The two of you together are a pair made by the heavens. Tai Shi-cheng's voice was a little strange. I am very sorry, but I cannot stay. Chu Yang was silent for a while before replying apologetically. If you stay, I can make the decision to betroth my only daughter to you. Tai Shi-cheng stared at Chu Yang and said, "Don't be in such a hurry to refuse. You marry my daughter, and from then on you will be the regent of Ironcloud Nation. You will have absolute power, and you will be at the pinnacle of power." Behind him, Tai Bu Tian lowered his head. He gently bit his lips and said, "Father, Minister Chu, your daughter is the #1 beauty of Ironcloud Nation. Tai Shi-cheng did not pay attention to Tai Bu-tien. He only looked at Chu Yang. She will have the pinnacle of power and wealth as her dowry. Are you willing to stay? The number one beauty, the pinnacle of power, and the riches and honor of the nation. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. This is indeed an irresistible temptation. It's not small, but this Chu's heart belongs to someone else. Moreover, my lifelong ambition is not to stay in the lower three heavens. Chu Yang smiled. Your Majesty's good intentions, I can only thank you in my heart. Tai Shi-cheng's sunken eyes suddenly shot out two sharp rays of light. After a long time, he said weakly, Good. Good. You are indeed King of Hell Chu. He coughed twice and said casually, Minister Chu, I want to ask you something. You must answer truthfully. Chapter 194. Chu Yang pondered for a moment. After weighing the pros and cons in his heart for a long time, he said, I know about Mr. Du's disappearance. Tai Bu-tien's countenance changed drastically. He had already had this guess and premonition in his heart a long time ago. But now that Chu Yang had personally said that he knew, it still shook him to his core. Tai Shi-cheng, on the other hand, smiled with satisfaction and said, Only knowing? Chu Yang was silent for a while and said, I only know. I also did not think that Senior Du would disappear so quickly or so coincidentally. In the end, Chu Yang still chose to keep it a secret. Oh. Senior Du said that staying in Iron Cloud is his greatest danger. Chu Yang said casually, Yes. Tai Shi-cheng and Tai Bu-tien behind him nodded at the same time. Tai Shi-cheng chuckled and said, The matter of Du Shi-cheng treating my injuries before the 10 most urgent matters, Tai Shi-cheng and Bu-tien both know this clearly. Him staying here is indeed a great danger. Chu Yang was shocked. He looked at Tai Bu-tien, and Tai Bu-tien also looked at him with a complicated expression. So Tai Bu-tien already knew about this matter, yet, he was able to control himself perfectly even when he was fully aware of the situation. Allowing Du Shi-cheng to heal his father, the pressure on his heart was unimaginable. If Du Shi-cheng could do it the first time, who knows if he could not do it the second time? Continue speaking. Tai Shi-cheng's spirit was at its peak at this moment. His Majesty's illness cannot be delayed for much longer. Senior Du said that even if he tried his best, His Majesty could only be delayed for 2 more months. At that time, Du Shi-cheng will definitely die. Chu Yang said casually, Yes. Whether it is Bu-tien or Diwu-ching-ru, at that time, they will not let him go. Hearing Tai Shi-cheng's words, Chu Yang could not help but stare at him. This sickly king had already foreseen what would happen in the future. If we do not kill Du Shi-cheng, we will not be able to answer to Iron Cloud. But if we kill Du Shi-cheng, the consequences will be unimaginable. Du Shi-cheng's death will be a great help to Diwu-ching-ru. This will be his lifetime of medical connections. Yes. This Chu has received news that if His Majesty passes away, Diwu-ching-ru will begin his grand scheme. At that time, Iron Cloud will be in chaos. Diwu-ching-ru had a great chance of succeeding. Even if it doesn't work, Iron Cloud's vitality will be greatly damaged. Tai Shi-cheng pondered for a moment and slowly said, That's right. At that time, it was indeed Iron Cloud's greatest crisis. And the only way to resolve that crisis is to fight to the death. But I've told Bu-tien many times, but he turned a deaf ear. Mr. Dean's disappearance has caught everyone off guard. Although I am aware of it, I still feel that it is too sudden. Chu Yang said solemnly, However, after this matter passed, I realized that we were caught unprepared. I'm afraid Diwu-ching-ru was even more caught unprepared. Well said. Tai Shi-cheng praised. Now, I can finally be at ease. He paused and said sternly, Bu-tien, no matter what happens in the future, you must not make things difficult for Minister Chu. Minister Chu is a far-sighted person. He will definitely be your greatest help. Tai Bu-tien sadly closed his eyes. After a long time, he softly agreed. After I was injured, I wanted to take care of myself. But at that time, Bu-tien was still young and I was worried. So I forced myself to hold on. Later on, I could not die even if I wanted to. Tai Shi-cheng said happily, Now that Minister Chu is here, I can finally rest assured. I have been waiting for this day for more than 3 years. It has been very tiring. It has been very tiring, very tiring. Tai Shi-cheng's expression darkened. The red glow on his face began to fade. The effect of the dragon spirit incense had begun to wear off. Tai Shi-cheng leaned against the wall. His eyes suddenly became blurred. There was an unspeakable longing and yearning in them. He murmured, "Empress, I will be reunited with you soon. All these years, have you ever blamed me, Lian Meng Qing Tai Shi-cheng murmured the names of his beloved wives and daughters that he had killed with his own hands. Suddenly, sorrow came from his heart. He suddenly cried out, "I want to die. I want to die. I want to, Chu Yang sighed in his heart. As a king, everyone saw his honor and glory, but who knew how much a king had to endure? The pain of this king in front of him was something that normal people would not even dare to imagine. If there is an afterlife. The light in Tai Shi-cheng's eyes became dimmer and dimmer. He murmured, "The road to becoming a king is long and full of blood. The country is always in my heart, but I have no choice but to sweep away my tears with a butcher's knife. My beloved wives and daughters are wronged souls. In this life, I do not go far on the road to the underworld. In the next life, I will abandon my roots. I will not go far. Ha ha." Tai Shi-cheng smiled weakly and said, "Love to rise, but don't rise." His eyes suddenly emitted a very bright light. He was happy and elated. It was as if he could see his beloved on the road to the underworld, waiting to be reunited with him. Then, the light in his eyes suddenly went out. This king was still in his original position, but there was no longer any life in his body. The ruler of Iron Cloud Nation, Tai Shi-cheng, died today. Imperial Father, don't leave me behind. Tai Bu-tien let out a shrill cry, her eyes suddenly widening in despair. She hugged Tai Shi-cheng's thin body tightly and used her face to rub desperately against her father's face, as if she wanted to pass the warmth of her body to her father. Then, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and softly fell down. His eyes were closed and he was unconscious. Chu Yang sighed. Chu Yang sighed sadly. He didn't know what to feel as he watched the emperor finish his life's journey in front of his eyes. He thought back to what Tai Shi-cheng had just said. Lian ascended the throne at the age of 18. Within 10 years, he trained his troops and trained his horses. Looking at all the heroes in the world, there was no one who could match him. Conquering the south and conquering the north, he was invincible at the mere sight of the wind. Wherever he pointed, the ice melted. In just 5 years, he expanded Ironcloud's territory by 1/3. At that time, Lian was full of ambition. He always felt that the world was in my hands, and the world would eventually be unified by me. Wherever he pointed, he was invincible at the mere sight of the wind. Wherever he pointed, the ice melted. How majestic was this? How domineering was this? Looking at the body in front of him now, so thin that only his bones were left. Such a strong contrast made one's heart ache. The deepest pain in this king's heart was probably that he killed his own empress and his own daughter with his own hands. Even in death, he still could not forget. But at that time, why did he act so viciously? This reason, even in death, he did not say. If this was a secret, then Tai Shi-cheng had undoubtedly brought this secret to his grave. In this life, he did not go far on the road to the underworld. In the next life, he would abandon his roots of riches and honor. He would not step on the rainbow-colored path of the cold sky. He would live a carefree life in the mountains and rivers. A king, before he died, left behind these words, "I will live a carefree life in the mountains and rivers." This made one sigh even more deeply. This throne, who knows how many people in the world dreamed of sitting on it, but the one who actually sat on it left behind such sentiments and wishes before he died. Wasn't this a huge irony? This king, when he was on the verge of death, did not summon his ministers to carry out the matter of entrusting his children to Tai Bu-tien. It was obvious that he was very confident in Tai Bu-tien. Furthermore, by not doing so, he had also given Tai Bu-tien an extremely clear hint: in the future, it will be your world. Chu Yang quietly retreated. Along the way, he did not let anyone stop him. He knew that Tai Bu Tian urgently needed someone to accompany him, but this person could not be him. Tai Bu Tian hated him too much right now. He could only wait until he had endured this period of pain. But no matter what, Tai Shi-cheng had died at this time, half a year earlier than in his previous life. Moreover, the harsh winter was about to arrive. The border would be stable for a period of time. In this kind of weather, Diwu Qingru would not have the time to do anything. This meant that Ironcloud's biggest crisis had quietly passed. But walking on the road, Chu Yang felt as if his heart was filled with lead. He did not feel the slightest bit of joy. Walking out of the palace, Chu Yang's heart was heavy. Suddenly, he felt a chill on his face. It's snowing. It's snowing. Somewhere, there was a cry of surprise. Chu Yang looked up and saw the fluttering snowflakes gently falling down. In an instant, the whole world became misty. Right now, late autumn had just passed, and it was only the beginning of winter. Ironcloud Citadel's first snow had already fallen so early. Chu Yang walked quietly on the road. His body slowly turned snow-white, and the ground was also covered in a layer of white. The snowflakes that fell first quickly melted, but the snowflakes that fell later also scrambled to cover the traces of melting. Slowly, the ground became silvery white. Within half an hour, heaven and earth became covered in a layer of silver. Chu Yang breathed in the cold air. He felt his almost frozen thoughts become active in an instant. He turned back to look at the majestic imperial city. It stood quietly in the white snow. He was speechless. It was as if they were silently mourning the passing of a king. No matter what, today, we have finally entered a new era, Chu Yang thought to himself. Then he took large strides and walked toward Heavenly Armament Pavilion, heavy snow. Chu Yang's thoughts became clear. It was as if his heart was following the fluttering snowflakes and melting into the endless sky. Creaking sounds came from under his feet. Chu Yang suddenly remembered, in his previous life, Qingwu used to love snow the most. Every time it snowed, she would always quietly stand in the snow with an umbrella in her red dress. At that time, it was the most peaceful and beautiful memory in Chu Yang's heart. That kind of elegance, that kind of beauty, every time Chu Yang thought about it, his heart trembled. Qingwu, what are you doing right now? Chu Yang's figure finally disappeared into the wind and snow, even though Tai Shi-cheng had been bedridden for many years and the people of Ironcloud were already prepared for his death still shook Ironcloud. Chapter 195. The three armies were led by three famous generals. Shun Wei General Liu Jian led 80,000 troops to attack from the left. Tian Wei General Yang Lai led 80,000 troops to attack from the right. Valiant bravery General Chen Yu who led 100,000 troops to attack from the left. Three armies, three famous generals, a total of 240,000 troops. Great Zhao's military operation this time could be said to be huge. Plus, it was early winter and the weather was cold. Great Zhao's operation could be said to be crazy. Ironcloud's Gold Star Citadel and Hungyun Pass were in a state of emergency. War reports were constantly coming in, but this time, because of the death of Tai Shi-cheng, Ironcloud was in mourning. Great Zhao's military operation ignited a war craze in Ironcloud Nation. The people's desire to fight was unprecedentedly strong. Tai Longcheng was guarding the border and could not come back to attend the funeral. Under the great pressure of Great Zhao, he was busy mobilizing his troops. Ironcloud Citadel welcomed the funeral of the monarch, Tai Shi-cheng. Cheng Yun he had a feeling. At the end of the road, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Tai Shi-cheng's death shocked Cheng Yun he and he was caught off guard. He knew that Tai Shi-cheng's death meant that Diwu Qingru's plan was completely disrupted. Everything would have to be rearranged. But there was also a great advantage, and that was that they could finally leave the citadel. These past few days of lockdown had caused Cheng Yun his hair to turn white. There was no way to communicate or leave the citadel. Looking at the time passing day by day, Yin Wu Fa who had taken Meng Hun's solution and was like a corpse, Cheng Yun he was burning with anxiety. There were dozens of searches every day. Cheng Yun he did not dare to move. He had no choice but to kill the invisible falcon that was sending messages. Because, As long as they flapped their wings, all of their lives would be forfeit. Losing contact was better than losing one's life. With the death of Tai Shi-cheng, the curfew was finally relaxed. Cheng Yun he finally breathed a sigh of relief and quickly applied to leave the citadel. After coming here, he bought a lot of ironclad specialties, especially the ones that could not be stored for long and would rot easily. All of the officials in Ironcloud Citadel were busy preparing for the monarch's funeral. Why would they care about such a small matter? Cheng Yun he applied to leave the city and was approved. Therefore, Cheng Yun he did not waste any time. He gathered all his men and escorted a long carriage out of the South City Gate. He was finally out. When Cheng Yun he walked out of Ironcloud Citadel, he could not help but look up at the snowflakes in the sky and take a few deep breaths. These past few days in Ironcloud Citadel, Cheng Yun he felt like he was suffocating. He simply couldn't breathe. Now that they were out of the city, they suddenly felt like little birds that had flown out of their cages. From now on, as long as King of Hell Chu is in Ironcloud Citadel, I will not come back. Cheng Yun he swore in his heart. But King of Hell Chu didn't give him the slightest opportunity to display his wisdom. It directly blocked all the road. When Cheng Yun he arrived at Ironcloud Citadel, the Heimo clan had already been used by King of Hell Chu and left. His fist hit nothing but air. As for using his connections with other officials, Cheng Yun he did not even dare to think about it. As soon as he arrived, he could see that all the officials in Ironcloud Citadel were in danger. They were all terrified. If his identity was exposed, he was afraid that King of Hell Chu would not even need to give an order. He would be torn apart alive by those officials. Then, they would take his corpse to King of Hell Chu for a reward. Cheng Yun he was very sure of this. It would be good enough if he could bring the rest of his men back to Great Jiao. Looking at the riders of Golden Horse Riders Department next to him, Cheng Yun he wanted to cry. When they arrived, everyone was in high spirits. Now, they were all dejected. When they arrived, there were more than 40 people. Now, there were only a dozen people left. Most of them were martial great masters. Only 3 revered martial artists. Everyone else had disappeared from Ironcloud Citadel forever. Looking back one last time at this sorrowful city, Cheng Yun he shouted, "Let's go." The carriage rumbled as it traveled through the snow. Its speed was as slow as a turtle's crawl. They were still in Ironcloud territory. Cheng Yun he did not dare to throw away the goods. If he threw them away, it would definitely arouse suspicion. Therefore, even though it was slow, Cheng Yun he had to accept it. At Bu Tian Pavilion, Chu Yang frowned. "That's it?" Chen Yutong's face was covered in sweat. He grinned and said, "Yes, that's it." After the gates were opened, there were only a few groups of people who left. Plus, only 2 groups of merchants went south. Chu Yang was a little surprised. How could there be so few? During this time, many people must have gone crazy. There should not be so few. There are still many people waiting to leave. However, they are all from our country. Since they are in Ironcloud Citadel, they naturally want to attend His Majesty's funeral. Chen Yutong carefully explained. That makes sense. Chu Yang nodded. "It's about time. Everyone go help with the funeral. Make sure to protect His Majesty well. Do not let anything happen. As for this matter, I will personally take care of it." "Yes." Chen Yutong hesitated for a moment and asked, "Minister, are you not going to attend? This is a bit disrespectful. I should hide. If His Majesty sees me, that would be a great disrespect." Chu Yang smiled bitterly. These days, whenever Tai Bu Tian saw him, he would throw a tantrum. Yesterday, he even wanted to punch and kick him. Chu Yang escaped quickly so that he did not get hit. At this critical moment, why would Chu Yang go and ask for trouble? As long as he did not delay the day of the national funeral, it would be fine. For the rest of the time, he would avoid the limelight as much as possible. Even if nothing happened, Minister Chu would sneak out in the next few days. What's more, he had a legitimate reason to do so. The corner of Chen Yutong's mouth twitched. Even though he knew that he should not laugh about the emperor's death, he still could not help it. Tai Bu Tian and Chu Yang's relationship was really strange. If Tai Bu Tian was really unhappy, he only needed to issue a decree to remove Chu Yang from his position. However, Tai Bu Tian refused to do so no matter what. He even personally went to teach King of Hell Chu a lesson. It was as if he was acting out of spite. Chu Yang said a few words, and left in a hurry. Back at Heavenly Armament Pavilion, there were still a few people who did not care whether the Emperor of Iron Cloud Nation was dead or not. Jimo's injuries were almost healed. Chu Yang said a few words and then the 5 people excitedly changed their clothes and followed Chu Yang out of the city. A few days ago, Jimo showed his face and made the other people envious. Now, it was finally their turn to come out for some fresh air. Moreover, it was such a snowy day. A group of people wearing snow-white clothes rode a white horse and galloped out of Tai Bu Tian's Yunnan Gate. The soldiers guarding the gate were just about to question them when a card representing King of Hell Chu fell in front of them. They trembled and quickly opened the gate to let them in. The horse dashed out with a splashing sound. Awu! Damn, this weather is too good. Luo Kudi, with a pair of panda eyes, looked up to the sky and sang excitedly. These few days, young Master Luo had been living in darkness. Jiu Du Xing and Dong Wushong would come to him to spar. He was not their match and could only take a beating. Almost every day, he would take an average of 2 beatings. Young Master Luo was thoroughly angry. This morning, he did not wait for Jiu Du Xing to come. He got up and went to challenge Rui Bu Tong. First, he would pick the soft one. Who would have thought that Rui Bu Tong would throw out a series of strange punches? Young Master Luo was caught off guard. Both of his eyes were hit at the same time. He screamed and turned into a panda. Now that he finally came out for some fresh air, young Master Luo decided to relax. At the same time, he swore in his heart, "Wait until I master my martial arts. The first person I will take revenge on is Jiu Du Xing. I will beat him 10 times a day. No, 20 times. The second was of course Chu Yang, because Rui Bu Tong's strange punches were actually taught by Chu Yang. This was simply unbearable. The third was of course Dong Wushong. Young Master Luo was gnashing his teeth every day. Every night, he would sleep with his sore bones and a belly full of fantasies. If this person did not have the ability to fantasize, then he really would not be able to live through this day. Jimo and the others all laughed. Even Jiu Du Xing and Dong Wushong, the 2 famous cold-faced people, laughed heartily. It had to be said that these guys fought together every day. Although there were bruises on their faces every day, the relationship between them was getting deeper and deeper. Men and horses, in the wind and snow, followed the marks on the ground that had not yet disappeared. They chased all the way without any concealment. Chu Yang was very confident. Although the people he brought were all martial great masters, each of them represented the supreme martial arts of a big aristocratic family. In terms of fighting power, they were not weaker than ordinary revered martial artists. Even if a 2nd or 3rd grade revered martial artist fought with them, they were still very confident. The experts of Golden Horse Riders Department were almost all eliminated. Even if they met face to face, Chu Yang was not afraid. Not to mention, he still had the Calamity Sword in his hand. Therefore, Chu Yang was very confident and boldly chased after them. Sections of the journey were left behind. After running for 30 to 40 miles, they saw a long line of horses in front of them, moving quickly in the snow. Jiu Du Xing snorted coldly. He waved his hand and said, "Luo Kudi, go." "Why me?" Luo Kudi said discontentedly, "There are so many people idle." "You want me to go?" Dong Wushong turned his head. His eyes were very dangerous. "No, no." Luo Kudi stuttered. "Then you want me to go?" Jimo asked very fiercely. "Anyway, I'm not going." Rui Butong raised his nose. "Do you want me to go by myself?" Jiu Du Xing looked at Luo Kudi majestically. "Or let boss go?" "You dare to say this?" Luo Kudi glared. He was speechless. After a while, he said dejectedly, "I'll go." For a moment, he hung his head dejectedly. His high spirits just now had flown away. Since he had no choice, young Master Luo was very angry. However, The target of his anger was the long line of carriages in front of them. "It's all because of you. I have no choice but to lose face. You have to pay the price." His legs squeezing the white horse, Luo Ku-di rushed out like a gust of wind. He shouted impatiently all the way, "Giddy, giddy, 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 giddy." He rushed to the front of the group of horses and turned his horse around. Then, with a wave of his hand, a large tree by the roadside fell down with a loud boom, blocking the road. Then, he turned his horse around and rode on it. Then, he waved his hand and a silver light flashed. Chapter 196. It's getting more and more alike. Even this demeanor is similar. The black-clothed man sighed. He turned around and walked 2 steps. Then, he suddenly raised his hand, and a wisp of purple light flew towards Chu Yang. He said, "You can keep this thing. It can be considered a small gift from me to you." After walking a few steps, he turned back and looked at Chu Yang's face. He shook his head and sighed. Finally, he stomped his foot and flew up into the sky. He disappeared in a flash and said, "Goodbye, little one." Suddenly, he disappeared without a trace. Far away, an ethereal voice echoed between heaven and earth. "Going through 1,000 mountains without giving up, where can I ask for the regrets of my life? Endless road, autumn every year, drunk every day, unable to quench my sorrows." The voice was bleak and there was a faint sense of misery. It echoed in the snow for a long time. Chu Yang looked blankly in the direction where he disappeared. He didn't know why, but he actually felt sad. It was as if his entire state of mind was like this snowy weather. It became confused, ethereal, and unreal. He opened his palm and looked. A purple jade pendant lay quietly in his hand, emitting a sparkling light. It was just a pure purple crystal. There were no words engraved on it. He sighed and kept the jade pendant. A question lingered in his heart. Who is this person? "Boss, are you okay?" Jiu Du Xing and the others immediately ran over and asked with concern. "I'm fine." Chu Yang forced a smile and said, "Let's go back." He didn't know why, but Chu Yang suddenly felt very depressed. He silently mounted his horse and waved his hand. The strong horse neighed and galloped into the snow. Jiu Du Xing and the others looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Without further delay, the 5 of them mounted their horses at the same time and chased in the direction Chu Yang left. The horse galloped and disappeared in a flash. The snow fluttered and fell densely. Not long after, it covered the traces of Chu Yang and the others. The entire ground was white and flat. It was impossible to see where someone had walked and where the road originally was. A long time after Chu Yang and the others left, the man in green was flying all the way. He was like a ray of light in the snow, constantly flashing and disappearing. He had already gone a long way. Suddenly, he stopped abruptly and muttered, "Something is still not right." He stood in the snow and thought carefully. Suddenly, he slapped his forehead and muttered, "You really have a pig's head. How could a mere martial master like him dare to carry such a precious item with him? If he doesn't have it on him, does that mean he really doesn't have it?" She sighed in annoyance and muttered to herself, "When I asked his father, this little brat said, 'My father? He died a long time ago.' This was very strange. Why was there so much resentment? If what he said is true, the son of a hunter, then it's even more impossible." After thinking for a while, he said, "I'd better go back and take a look." Thinking of this, he turned around and flew towards the direction where he had met Chu Yang, but at this time, Chu Yang had already left for a long time. Standing at the place where he had spoken with Chu Yang, the man in blue looked around. However, all traces of their conversation were covered by the heavy snow, and nothing could be seen. "Little brat, you're walking really fast." The man in green snorted and revealed a proud smile. He said, "Don't tell me that jade pendant was given to you for free." Closing his eyes, he activated his divine power and carefully sensed it. It turned out that he had left a trace of his energy in that jade pendant. This way, no matter where the jade pendant was, as long as it was not more than 300 miles away, he could sense the location of the jade pendant once he activated his energy. All these years, in order to find people, He had given out hundreds of such jade pendants. Although they all ended in disappointment, this method of finding people had never failed. After a while, the man in blue opened his eyes. Strange, strange. Even if he was riding a horse, he should have only traveled a few dozen miles. Why can't I sense him at all? It turned out that the energy of the jade pendant had completely disappeared, as if it had never existed in this world. Strange. What's going on? The man in blue slowly paced around here. His face was filled with worry. It was like finding a needle in a haystack. Where should he go to find him? I'll look for him for a few more days. If I still can't find him, I'll go back and tell my family. The man in blue scratched his head. He had given out hundreds of jade pendants. Because of this, his family had mobilized hundreds of people. Every time they were disappointed, he would be punished. It was a bit chilling. Motherfucker, he really is a little devil who torments people. Thinking back and forth, the man in blue looked up to the sky and sighed. He could not help but feel a bit angry. He cursed, "Motherfucker, you lost a baby less than a month old, yet you let old he come and find him. Motherfucker, how many people are there in heavenly layer? Isn't this like finding a needle in a haystack? You can't find him, yet you take it out on me every time. Is there any justice in this world?" After sighing for a while, he finally stomped his feet and disappeared with a gloomy face. At this time, Chu Yang had already returned to Iron Cloud Citadel. When the man in blue gave him the purple crystal, the sword spirit sensed that there was a strange aura inside. It immediately warned him, "This thing has a tracking aura. It is not appropriate for you to carry it around." So Chu Yang did as he was told. The sword spirit put away the purple crystal. When Hu Lai facing Calamity Sword Scraping Point sensed the purple crystal, it immediately swallowed it. It completely destroyed the corpse. Chu Yang hadn't thought that this matter would bring him so much trouble. Right now, he only felt that this guy was not a good person. He actually left a tracking item on my body. What did he want to do? Me. Tai Shi-cheng's funeral would be held in 3 days. As the ruler of a country, having such a hasty funeral was indeed a bit slow. However, Iron Cloud Nation was in a critical period. The longer it dragged on, the more time it would give Diwu Qingru more time. Therefore, after some discussion, they decided to keep it simple. After Chu Yang returned to Bu Tian Pavilion, Cheng Ang came to report this matter. Cheng Ang stammered and said, "His Highness did not mention Minister Chu." Chu Yang quietly nodded and said, "You can go do your work." Cheng Ang and Chen Yutong both left anxiously. Chu Yang naturally understood the meaning of his words. Obviously, everyone thought that he was going to be unlucky. The officials of Iron Cloud had asked Tai Bu Tian when the funeral was being held. They had said that the mysterious king of Hell Chu should be present at the funeral of His Majesty, no matter what his identity was, and no matter how much he wanted to maintain his mystery. But this decision was ruthlessly rejected by Tai Bu Tian. At that time, Tai Bu Tian said, "Minister Chu? What do you want him to do?" Her voice was filled with anger and dissatisfaction. And Bu Tian Pavilion's actions these days were also notified by the Ministry of Justice. It was not the minister who gave the order. Therefore, some people guessed that King of Hell Chu was about to step down. All the signs pointed to this point. For a moment, many people were very happy. In fact, many people were planning to humiliate this mysterious King of Hell Chu once he stepped down from the throne. These days, they were scared too much by him. Chu Yang laughed at such rumors. He naturally understood why Tai Bu Tian did not let him attend the funeral. Tai Butian was indeed angry, but she definitely wouldn't go to the extent of completely falling out with Chu Yang. The most important reason was that no matter what, Chu Yang's identity could not be revealed. And another reason was that Tai Bu Tian needed to calm down. Tai Bu Tian needed time. And another reason was that a country could not be without a ruler for a day. After the late emperor passed away, a new emperor ascended the throne. There was a change of dynasty. Tai Bu Tian would be very busy during this time. She really did not have the mood to care about Bu Tian Pavilion. And everything in Bu Tian Pavilion was proceeding in an orderly manner. It was only because they had no experience with the death of an emperor and the ascension of a new emperor that they needed to be notified by the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Rights. These departments did not have the slightest command over Bu Tian Pavilion's actions. Chu Yang also did not understand these things, so he was happy to relax. He was a hands-off shopkeeper for a period of time. He walked out of Bu Tian Pavilion and came to Heavenly Armament Pavilion. He received a piece of good news. After returning, Dong Wusheng immediately meditated and practiced. He was actually about to break through. Everyone was happy for him, but Dong Wusheng was the only one who was unhappy. He went from third to fourth in such a short time. No one would be happy if this happened to him. Dong Wusheng still remembered Chu Yang's promise. When he saw Chu Yang return, he asked excitedly, "Boss, I remember you once said that as long as I break through this month, you will give me a saber." Chu Yang nodded. Seeing his anxious face, he could not help but laugh. "What? Can't wait." Dong Wusheng scratched his head embarrassedly and said, "Then I will go back to the clan to get the ink steel." "All right." After receiving Chu Yang's confirmation, Dong Wusheng did not hesitate for a moment. He turned and ran out. His voice came from afar. "I will be back immediately." Then, he actually disappeared. Jimo puffed out his chest and said, "Boss." Hee. "What?" "Didn't boss say, as long as I can stay, he will give me a sword?" Jimo rubbed his hands. This sword. Did you remember wrongly?" Chu Yang was stunned. He tilted his head and said playfully, "What you said to me was, as long as you can stay and make outstanding contributions, then these weapons will be your reward." "Yes, and I only said this to Dong Wusheng because his saber is specially made. I don't remember saying this to you." "Dear boss, dear big brother." Jimo was so anxious that his eyebrows fluttered in disarray. His face turned red. "Big brother." He pitifully grabbed Chu Yang's hand and shook it back and forth. He looked like a child who was asking for candy from an adult. "My lifelong wish is to obtain such a sword. Old man, please help me. Just think of it as doing a good deed. Just think of it as doing a good deed. Just think of it as. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.